Chapter 605. The person who jumped out of the magic car was called Torres. He was the eldest son of Aphelia's second uncle. He was 2 years younger than Aphelia, so he was his cousin. The two of them weren't that different in age and lived in close villages. They had played together since they were young, so they were very close. Old man Aphelia had been thinking about the relatives he wanted to live with after returning to Banna City, and he was one of them. Because old man Aphelia had been in the Principality of Constantine for the past few years, the two of them hadn't met much. The last time they met was when they returned to Banna City during the New Year's. Suddenly seeing Torres come here in a magic car, old man Aphelia was first surprised before his heart filled with shock. Could it be that something had happened at home that made Torres suddenly come here? Second uncle's body wasn't good. Could it be that something had happened to the old man? Thinking of this, old man Aphelia quickly moved forward and quickly walked over. However, when they got closer, they found that there was not a trace of sorrow on Torres' face. Instead, he was looking at the surrounding environment with great interest. In the end, he exclaimed repeatedly. It was obvious that he was shocked by the strange, clean, and beautiful environment of this territory. Old man Aphelia was confused. He looked over and found that among the people who got out of the magic car behind Torres, there were several people he was familiar with. They were all villagers from Rafuto village where Torres lived. They had played with old man Aphelia when he was young. These people had the same expression as Torres after getting out of the car, looking around in shock and looking intoxicated. Old man Aphelia was very surprised. Why did all these people come here? Although it was much easier to come here from Banna City, it still took half a day to get here. If there wasn't anything important, why would they come here? Old man Aphelia quickly came to Torres' side and slapped him on the shoulder. Torres was shocked. He turned and saw that it was old man Aphelia, so he excitedly gave him a big hug. He said with a wide smile, "Hey, Aphelia, you never thought that I would be here, right?" Seeing his reaction, old man Aphelia relaxed. It seemed like nothing bad had happened. After the two hugged, they let go of each other. Old man Aphelia immediately asked, "I never thought that you would come. But Torres, what did you suddenly come here for? Could it be that you're looking for me for something?" "It's not bad to say that I'm looking for you," Torres said with a grin. "I'm new here, so I'm not familiar with this place. I just knew that you were here, so of course I wanted you to show me around." "Hey, Aphelia, how many years have you been here? Tell me, how is this place? Isn't it much better than Banna City?" Old man Aphelia was a little confused by his question. "I say, Torres, what are you asking this for? Could it be that you're planning on living?" "Of course." Torres nodded his head vigorously. Torres, 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 but Torres, 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 Torres. But you can be assured the Frestec Chamber of Commerce has already agreed. They said that they have already prepared residences for us new workers, and the conditions are very good. So you don't need to worry about me living in your home." "I'm not worried about that." Aphelia waved his hand and frowned as he asked, "You mean you want to work here?" "Yes. Not only me, but Educa's family, Lopez's family of 3, and Delardo's family will also come." Torres patted Aphelia's old man's shoulder and laughed. "How about it? Aphelia, so many old friends are here to accompany you. Are you happy?" Old man Aphelia stared at Torres in disbelief. After a while, he stuttered, You're saying that all of their families are coming here to work? This is impossible, right?" "Why not?" Torres glared at Aphelia. "What? Don't you welcome us?" No. I welcome it. I welcome it very much. I welcome it completely. I can't wait for you to come right now." "Right, I have to hurry back and ask Senna to prepare some good dishes. We'll have a good drink at noon." "Ah, that's not right. You just arrived. Shouldn't you report first? Has the new flyer been arranged?" "That's right. How did you come here?" "Ah, isn't this the magic passenger car?" "I was just asking." Because of his shock and excitement, old man Aphelia couldn't even speak properly. Seeing old man Aphelia's helpless appearance, Torres gave a laugh before shaking his head. "All right, Aphelia, you don't need to worry about it. The new flyer has already arranged everything for us. The person in charge just now said that he would show us around and then arrange a place for us to live, so you don't need to care. Since the new flyer has agreed, they will definitely arrange everything." Anon, The new flyer never goes back on their words. Right, I was wondering why they were building some houses, so it was for people like you. Let me tell you, Torres, those new houses are very beautiful, and there are some necessary household magic machines inside, as well as running water. After a while, when the street lights are installed, it will be much more convenient to live there. Moreover, hearing Old Man Aphelia's introduction, Torres became more and more excited. Although the Frestac Chamber of Commerce's person in charge of recruiting workers had told them about the good environment here, now that he had personally seen the clean and beautiful environment, as well as the introduction of a trustworthy person like Aphalia, he truly believed that the living environment here was as good as the Frestac Chamber of Commerce advertised it to be. Based on Old Man Aphelia's endless praises, the environment here was probably even better than what was advertised. Thinking of this, Torres's heart was filled with excitement and joy. It was a good thing that when the new flyer recruited workers, he had chosen to give it a try. Now that he was here, he found that the living environment here was much better than Banta City's. As for Banta City's environment, because of the new flyer's work with the City Lord Manor, it was much better than other places in the Lampari Kingdom. Moreover, according to the contract he signed with the new flyer, he would enter the new flyer's shipyard as a magic welder. With his second-grade magic welding skill, once he entered the shipyard, he would receive a minimum wage of 20 gold coins a month. If his performance was good in his first year, his wage would increase to 25 gold coins next year. Although, with his magic welding skill that was considered rare right now, he could still find a job with a higher wage in Banta City. But there was no doubt that the new flyer was more attractive than the other companies. Now that he was here, Torres didn't regret his choice at all. If he could live in this beautiful environment, even if his wage was reduced by 10 gold coins was too much, but even if it was reduced by 5 gold coins, he was definitely willing. Before Old Man Aphalia finished introducing the benefits of this place, the person in charge of the new flyer who brought Torres and the other newly recruited workers here was already taking attendance, preparing to count the number of people. Torres patted Old Man Aphalia's shoulder with a wide smile. "I'll find you for a drink tonight." After saying that, he ran all the way into the crowd and lined up according to the rules. Seeing Torres' cautious appearance, Old Man Aphalia couldn't help smiling. This Torres had a lively personality since he was young, and even though he was close to 50, he still didn't fear anything. Now that he was acting like this here, it could be seen that he was very satisfied with this place and placed great importance on becoming a worker of the new flyer. Of course, Old Man Aphalia understood his thoughts very well. Coming here and seeing this beautiful environment, then thinking of the good reputation of the new flyer and the satisfactory wages and benefits, who would be willing to give up this job opportunity? Thinking of how Torres was likely to stay here and live here for a long time, then thinking of how Torres had said that Aduca's family, Lopez's family of 3, and Delardo's family would all be here, Old Man Aphalia felt the dark clouds above his head suddenly scatter, and his mood instantly became much better. Seeing Torres get into the magic car again, Old Man Aphalia turned to head home with a smile. Torres said that he would find him for a drink tonight. Hey, this fellow's alcohol tolerance is this bad. He will definitely drink until he can't get up tonight. The magic car headed in the opposite direction of Old Man Aphalia. Old Man Aphalia was returning to his home in the living area, but the magic car was taking Torres and the other newly recruited workers to the factories in the industrial area. He planned on letting them see the environment of the factories, giving them some understanding of the new flyers industry and their future jobs. Although they had come all the way from Banta City, that didn't mean that they would definitely stay here to work. But after visiting each factory, the 276 newly recruited workers and the 10 medium-sized passenger magic cars were all very satisfied with the environment of these factories. Each factory in the new flyer was very clean, and the work was very orderly, looking very natural. When the workers were working, they were like screws in the giant factory, playing their roles very accurately. Compared to the dirty and messy working conditions of the factories under the other companies, the Frestac Chamber of Commerce's factory was incomparably formal, and it was unknown how much higher grade it was. Thinking back to the living area that they had seen before, all the workers had gradually made their final choice in their hearts. They had to stay. Chapter 606. The shipyard that Torres wanted to visit was built by the sea, but it was the last place he would visit. When he got out of the magic car, Torres hadn't even walked through the gate of the shipyard when he looked at the sea, and he couldn't help taking a cold breath. On the wide sea, there was a giant ship that was 5 stories tall and was at least 50 meters long that slowly came out of the sea, blocked by the shipyard. When such a huge ship came out, it was like a mountain slowly moving on the sea. Even if he was 200 meters away from his ship, Torres could still feel a powerful pressure coming from it. The biggest ship Torres had seen in his life was the magic boat that the Porter Chamber of Commerce used to transport goods. It was around 30 meters long and 5 meters tall. Such a ship was already extremely huge when it was sailing on the sandy river. But if the magic boat was placed beside this ship, it would definitely look very small. Torres swallowed a mouthful of saliva and turned to look at the others. He found that they were all looking at this giant ship in a daze. With a thought in his mind, Torres couldn't help pointing at this giant ship. He looked at the new Flyers manager Basaka, who was leading them on the tour, and asked, "I say, after we enter the shipyard, it can't be that we're responsible for building this kind of large ship, right?" Basaka glanced at Torres with a smile. He was not surprised by his reaction at all. This was already the 5th batch of workers he had brought on a tour. When each batch of workers saw the unfolding wings, large transport magic boat, they would be as shocked as the people in front of them. "Yes, our shipyard is currently focused on building this large transport magic boat. You're a magic welder, right?" After receiving Torres' confirmation, Basaka continued, "There are many places that need magic welding on this large transport magic boat. After a magic welder like you enters the shipyard, you will definitely be put in an important position." Torres licked his lips and looked up at the large transport magic boat, as his heart was filled with pride. For him to be able to participate in the construction of such a colossus, it was simply too amazing. When everyone gradually recovered from the shock brought by the large transport magic boat, Basaka called out to everyone and prepared to lead them into the shipyard to continue their tour. The shipyard was the last factory they needed to visit. After showing these workers around, he was responsible for bringing these new workers to the personnel department of the company to sign an employment contract. Then he would arrange living quarters for them and help them with their living conditions. There were many things to do, so he had to make the best use of his time. But before they could take 2 steps, a pure white magic sedan suddenly came from behind them. After passing by them, this magic sedan suddenly stopped. Torres and the others were still puzzled, but Barbase's expression suddenly turned serious, and he subconsciously straightened his body. Basaka's body straightened up, and a person. After seeing this person, Barca immediately bowed respectfully, while Torres and the others were in an uproar. Chairman Suzes assessed. It's Chairman Suzes. S's Tuzes, do you test Tuzes? Izes, SSSS. Izes led you, this. Chairman Su, are you here to see us? Chairman Su, I'm very satisfied with your place. I will definitely stay. Chairman Sui looked over everyone's faces and raised his hands with a faint smile. Everyone stopped and looked at Sui, waiting for him to speak. Everyone, I think that you should all know that Banta City can be considered my second home. Since you came to Banta City, you could be considered my fellow countrymen. As fellow countrymen, since everyone is here, I hope that you can live happily here. If you're satisfied with the environment here and are willing to stay and join our company, I represent New Flyer in welcoming you. Relax. Chairman Su will definitely stay. That's right. This place is simply great. I already can't wait to work and live here. Right. It will definitely be comfortable here. I will definitely stay. Everyone wasn't stingy with their praise for the environment and New Flyer, while also praising Sui. Sui accepted everyone's praise with a faint smile before turning to look at Basaka with a questioning look. Basaka immediately understood and replied in a loud voice, "Sir Chairman, please be assured I will definitely take care of everything for these guests who have come from afar. I will definitely let them feel assured and comfortable here." Sui nodded before turning to Torres' group with a smile. "All right, I hope that all of you can stay and move forward with our New Flyer." After saying this, he waved his hand, but he didn't get back into the magic sedan. Rather, he jumped out and flew over 200 meters, landing on the deck of the giant transport magic ship. Narvel, who was reading a report on the deck, saw Sue-E land and came over to say, "Sir Chairman, it seems like you place great importance on the workers recruited from Banta City." "Of course." Sue-E gave a slight nod. "Banta City is the place with the best magic machine industry on the continent other than our new flyer. Most of the workers there have rich experience in making magic machines, so recruiting workers from there is the fastest and most direct way to increase the strength of our company. So naturally, I place great importance on it. But Banta City and the Lampari Kingdom also have a great need for skilled workers, right? If you do this..." Narvel paused as his expression became a bit strange. "Aren't you afraid that Her Majesty 70 will be unhappy?" Sue-E laughed. "I've helped the Lampari Kingdom build 13 magic machine industry vocational training schools, as well as providing many of our company's most outstanding magic machine engineers and skilled workers as instructors. Now that I'm just recruiting a few workers from the Lampari Kingdom, Her Majesty definitely won't have any objections. Then again, these workers are willing to come. I didn't force them." Narvel couldn't help shaking his head. Although Sue-E didn't force them, he had given such good conditions to recruit people. So how could a normal person be moved? Moreover, no matter who it was, as long as they saw the superior living and working conditions here, who would be able to resist the temptation to stay? He was the owner of the best fishing boat in the Principality of Constantine, so his living conditions were considered good in the Principality, but because of the superior conditions given by the new flyer, he came here to work. "How was the sailing this time?" Sue-E asked Narvel. Narvel gave the report in his hand to Sue-E and nodded with a smile. "It's very good, Sir Chairman. The furthest we went was 100 kilometers from the coastline, and the sailing was very smooth. Even if we met a storm, the unfolding wings was still strong, and there wasn't any danger at all." After saying this, Narvel patted the railing beside him with an emotional look. Actually, the storm this time wasn't small at all. If it was the wooden boats that us fishermen used before, the chances of survival would be very low. But this storm in front of the unfolding wings was like a tickle. It didn't pose any threat at all. Sue-E laughed. "Of course, this unfolding wings is the work of all the researchers, engineers, and workers in our company, gathering the strength of the entire company. If it could be destroyed by a small storm, it would be too disappointing." Narvel gave a strong nod. "Yes, Sir Chairman. When I went out to sea before, I was always nervous, not knowing when I would be buried at the bottom of the sea. But as long as I get on this unfolding wings, I feel that the entire sea is like a flat land. There isn't any danger at all. I feel that as long as I control the unfolding wings, I can even reach the depths of the endless sea." "Good. Your courage is commendable." Sue-E patted his shoulder. "In the future, when our company forms an exploration fleet, I will definitely let you be the commander of this fleet." Narvel was instantly excited and said loudly, "Many thanks for Sir Chairman's trust. I will definitely lead this fleet and explore the endless depths of the sea." Sue-E smiled and waved his hand. "All right, let's leave these words for when the exploration fleet is truly formed. Before that, let's first complete our first long-distance exploration." Narvel chuckled. "Reporting to Sir Chairman, the unfolding wings is ready. Please give the order to set sail." Sue-E nodded and said in a deep voice, "All right, set sail." Narvel took out a palm-sized magic communicator from his chest and said in a low voice, "Everyone prepare. The unfolding wings, set sail." There were several received replies that came from the magic communicator. After a while, the giant ship suddenly trembled and slowly moved out of the harbor, heading into the depths of the endless sea. This unfolding wings had gathered a large number of researchers and mechanical engineers from the company, as well as 5,000 workers. They had invested 2,390,000 gold coins, and it had taken 8 months to finish. This giant magic ship that could sail across the deep sea was finished, which meant that New Flyer had made a major breakthrough in magic machine technology. Although this was just a magic ship, there were countless pieces of technology inside. With such a large magic ship being built, it didn't just mean that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had created a complete magic machine industrial system. It also meant that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had succeeded in building large-scale magic machines. They were a step closer to the high-tech industrial system on Earth, which was Su Yi's dream. So when the unfolding wings left the harbor and headed into the endless sea at a speed of 11 knots, Su Yi stood at the bow of the ship, looking at the deep red sun on the horizon and the sea breeze with a fishy smell. He felt a strong confidence fill his body. There would be a day when he would recreate the miracle of industrial technology on Earth. Chapter 607. With a new high-power wind magic engine and the support of the large-scale water magic array, the unfolding wing ship could reach a maximum speed of 30 kilometers an hour, which was equal to over 15 knots. Although there was still quite a bit of difference compared to the ships on Earth, the Academy of Magic and the Magic Machine Development Center still had a lot of room to improve on the wind magic engine. Adding in the fact that the fire magic engine had already been developed to a certain degree, it was very likely that it would be developed soon, so the power would be increased even further. The most important thing was that the large water magic array at the bottom of the magic ship that used the water flow to move it, while also reducing the resistance of the water flow, increasing the speed of the magic ship, was still in its initial stage of development. When this magic array was further developed, or if there was an even more useful water magic array, the speed of the magic ship would without a doubt increase again. Su Yi was confident that the magic ship's speed would definitely catch up to the ships on Earth and might even surpass them. Because compared to it, the large-scale water magic array that the magic ship used was something that Earth didn't have. Moreover, with the help of this water magic array, the magic ship would be less affected by the currents. It would reduce the effects of storms on the sea and increase the safety of the ship while also being very stable. It was just like walking on land. There wouldn't be any bumps at all. The smooth sailing of the unfolding wings ship even made the Captain Narvel feel a bit bored. He was born by the sea and had been fishing with his parents since he was young. He had spent most of his life on the sea and was already used to the dangerous and exciting life on the sea. Now that he was driving the unfolding wings ship that was too calm, he wasn't used to it. Other than him, most of the crew members on the unfolding wings ship came from Great Magician Taluchi's hometown of Kariska Island, so they had all lived on the sea since they were young. Sailing on the unfolding wings ship was completely different from the wooden ships they had been on since they were young. Compared to that, sailing on the unfolding wings ship was just too comfortable. Of course, if one wanted excitement, the new flyer could still provide a choice. The small magic speedboat was a ship that pursued extreme speed. Although it had the support of the water magic array, its main function was to increase speed. It was much worse than the unfolding wings ship in terms of stability. The newly developed small magic speedboat could reach a speed of over 50 kilometers an hour. With how much smaller it was compared to the unfolding wings ship, if it charged across the sea at high speeds, it would even fly into the air when it met a wave. This was countless times more exciting than riding the unfolding wings. So the crew of the new flyer fleet would ride the small magic speedboats to experience this excitement when they had the chance. Great Magician Camilla was very fond of this activity. In his free time, other than racing cars, Great Magician Camilla would ride the small magic speedboats to experience the pleasure of surfing. No matter how one looked at it, he didn't look like an old man who was over 60 years old. Instead, he looked more like a young man who liked to pursue excitement. Every time he thought of Great Magician Camilla's surprising hobby, Su Yi couldn't help muttering in his heart. Could it be that after becoming a great magician, not only will one's body become younger because of the stimulation of magic, even one's mind will become younger? But every time he saw Great Magician Taluchi, he would remind Su Yi that Great Magician Camilla was only an exception. The unfolding wings ship sailed for over 4 hours and finally reached Kariska Island's harbor before night fell. When it got off the ship, Great Magician Taluchi and Kariska Island's Island Lord Smilton came forward to greet them. Chairman Su, welcome to Kariska Island again. Smilton gave Su Yi a large hug with a wide smile. Karska Island was called the Pirates' Island by people, and Smilton, as the island lord, had the title of Pirate King in the mouths of many people. But when facing Sue-E, this rough man was incomparably warm. With the contrast of his laughter and his smile, even the long scar on his face didn't seem that fierce. Sue-E returned the hug and said with a smile, "Island Lord Smilton, I'm here to disturb you again." Smilton laughed again. "I welcome Chairman Sue's disturbances very much. Everyone on the island also welcomes you. Everyone hopes that Chairman Sue can come and disturb us more." Sue-E revealed a faint smile. He thought that every time he came to Karska Island, he would bring many benefits to the people on the island, so of course they would welcome him from top to bottom. After getting in touch with Karska Island through Great Magician Toluchi, before Sue even came to Karska Island for the first time, New Flyer had already sent over 100,000 gold coins worth of daily necessities to Karska Island. When Sue-E came to Karska Island for the first time, other than bringing over 50,000 gold coins worth of household magic machines, he also did a detailed inspection of the island. In the end, he decided to build 2 factories and a mine here. The 2 factories were a cement processing factory and a small-scale steel mill. As for the mine, it could be considered a pleasant surprise. Although Karska Island wasn't big, being less than 10 square kilometers in size, there was an iron mine on it. Moreover, it was an open iron mine, so it was very rich in minerals. Sue-E had supported Karska Island before because he wanted to build a good relationship with Great Magician Toluchi so that he could draw Great Magician Toluchi to New Flyer. But after seeing the iron mine on the island, Sue-E immediately changed his position on Karska Island. He began considering turning Karska Island into an offshore base for New Flyer. After these 2 factories and the mine were built, with a large amount of iron produced from a mine, as well as the production from the cement processing factory and the small-scale steel mill, Sue-E first built a large harbor on Karska Island. The harbor outside was less than half finished, so it could only hold 3 large magic boats. According to Sue-E's plan, this harbor could hold at least 10 large magic boats at the same time. After Sue-E greeted Smilton, he turned to Great Magician Toluchi and gave him a magician's bow. "Your Excellency, Great Magician, it's already this late. Why are you coming out to greet me?" Great Magician Toluchi revealed a faint smile. "You're my chairman now. If I didn't come out to greet you, that would be too rude." Sue-E waved his hand. "You're too polite. I've already said it. You are just a special researcher of our Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce. You don't need to treat me as the chairman like the other employees of our company. But I'm still taking your salary, aren't I?" Great Magician Toluchi pointed at the brightly lit Karska Island behind him with a smile. Great Magician Toluchi pointed at Karska Island. "Moreover, not mentioning anything else, just based on the changes you've brought to Karska Island, it's enough for me to be polite to you." Great Magician Toluchi was speaking from the bottom of his heart. He was born on Karska Island, so he could feel the poverty of Karska Island. Because this island was far from land for the signs with their low technology, it was like it was cut off from the rest of the world. Because the land on Karska Island was barren, the residents of the island lived in poverty. They chose to become pirates because they were forced by their living conditions. Not to mention that the sea transport on the signs wasn't developed at all, so the residents of the island couldn't steal anything even if they became pirates. They could only barely survive. When Sue-E began paying attention to Karska Island, the environment of the island had greatly changed in just 3 short years. The previous Karska Island only had a few broken houses made of bricks and wood, barely enough for people to live in. They were very limited in their ability to block the wind and rain. After Sue-E built a cement factory and a small-scale steel mill on the island, while building the pier, he also completely changed the houses of the residents of the island. With the hard work of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce workers that Sue-E brought, there were many beautiful and sturdy houses built on Karska Island. There were also various household magic machines sent by New Flyer in these houses, making the lives of the residents of the island several times more convenient than before. Moreover, New Flyer would send people to deliver large amounts of food, oil, salt, and other daily necessities every month, making the residents of the island completely worry-free. Great Magician Taluchi had always wanted to change the lives of the residents of the island, but he had always been powerless. Now that he had personally seen the changes Sue-E had brought, he was naturally very grateful to Sue-E in his heart. Moreover, even if he had only joined New Flyer out of gratitude to Sue-E, after truly participating in the research of magic machines, he found that he was becoming more and more interested in this kind of work. Therefore, Great Magician Taluchi had already approved of Sue-E in his heart, so he had no qualms about calling him chairman. This time the Unfolding Wings was doing a long-distance cruise. When they arrived at Kariska Island, they also brought this month's daily necessities. After Sue-E and Great Magician Taluchi greeted each other, he said a few words to Smilton. Smilton waved his hand, and the prepared islanders came onto the Unfolding Wings, moving the daily necessities down with the crew of the Unfolding Wings. After all the daily necessities were moved, Sue-E gave a look to Great Magician Taluchi and Smilton. The three of them came onto the ship and came to another warehouse at the bottom of the Unfolding Wings. After opening the door to the warehouse, Smilton and Great Magician Taluchi looked over and took a deep breath at the same time. Looking over, there were all kinds of military magic machines in the warehouse. Chapter 608. Great Magician Taluchi didn't think much of it, but when Smilton saw the military magic machines, his eyes lit up and he walked over. He first picked up a magic repeating crossbow and looked it over with a look of joy on his face. Then he picked up a small magic bazooka and looked it over for a while before looking back at Sue-E. Chairman Sue, are these good things for us? Sue-E couldn't help rolling his eyes in his heart. This Smilton was really used to being a pirate. He had sent so many important daily necessities to Kariska Island, but he wasn't this happy. Now that he was giving them weapons, there was no need to guess his excitement. It was clearly written on his face. Of course, Sue-E still maintained the smile on his face as he gave a gentle nod. Yes, but it's not for free. Island Lord Smilton, the demand for military magic machines is very large right now, and these are all from the large orders I received, so it's impossible for me to give them to you for free. I understand this. Smilton gave a strong nod and said with a laugh, Chairman Sue, you don't need to say anything else. Our island has already received enough help from your New Flyer. The brothers on the island being able to live such good lives is all because of your help. Actually, you don't need to waste words. If you want us to help you with something, just say it. Although I'm a crude person without much knowledge, I still understand the basic rules. Great Magician Taluchi on the side had a thoughtful look on his face before giving a slight nod. Chairman Sue, you're a merchant. You definitely can't do business that loses money, and we can't let you do this. Although I have some value as a great magician, I'm very clear that I'm not worth you paying such a large price for me. Since you're helping the island like this, you must have your own plans. Everyone knows this in their hearts. Sue-E helplessly spread his hands and gave a self-deprecating laugh. It seems like I'm not suited for acting. I'm too straightforward. Smilton waved his hand and said, All right, Chairman Sue, let's not talk about this anymore. No matter what you want to do, with the New Flyer's help, everyone is living a good life, so it's only right for us to work for you. This is the most basic rule that everyone knows. Tell me, what do you want us to do? Seeing Great Magician Taluchi's questioning gaze, Sue-E shook his head with a smile. Relax, Your Excellency, Great Magician. I don't plan on making the residents of the island risk their lives for me. As a businessman, I've always felt that this method is very inefficient and can't bring me the greatest benefits. Great Magician Taluchi and Smilton looked at each other with curiosity in their eyes. Then what do you want us to help you with? If it's something else, why did you send these military magic machines? Smilton asked. It's not right to say that I don't need you to take risks. After all, I can't guarantee that there won't be any danger in these places. Sue-E waved his hand at the two of them, indicating for them to come over. The two of them came over in confusion. Sue-E took out a map from his chest and spread it out on the floor of the warehouse. Borrowing the light of the magic lamp in the warehouse, the two of them looked down and found that this map was a map. Taking a closer look, he found that most of the map showed the sea, and only a small part of it showed land. These continents were naturally islands. The two of them looked at the coastline on the right side of the map, and finally fell onto a marked island. "This is our Karska Island?" Smilton pointed at the island and asked in a surprised voice, "Why is this shape so strange?" "What? Island Lord, have you never seen the shape of the island from the sky before?" Sui asked with a smile. "It is indeed the shape of a flower. Looking at it from the sky, it looks very good." Great Magician Taluchi gave a soft nod. "Yes, this is indeed Karska Island. I used to fly up when I had nothing to do, and this shape is exactly the same as this island." Then he turned to ask Sui, "This is a map drawn from the sky, right? The surrounding islands should be the nearby islands." This is a detailed map of the nearby sea area that I had people draw with a magic airship. Your Excellency, Great Magician, what do you think?" Sui asked back. Great Magician Taluchi looked at the map for a while, and his expression became serious. This kind of detailed map can only be drawn from the sky, and in order to be accurate, one has to stay in the sky. Only the magic airship is suitable. "But Chairman Sui, why did you have people draw such a detailed map?" Smilton also looked at Sui with a trace of excitement in his eyes, as if he had guessed Sui's plan. As expected, Sui smiled and tapped on the map a few times before replying, "Your Excellency, Great Magician, Island Lord, look. From the Black Rice Wasteland to the coast of the Principality of Constantine, there are a total of 34 large and small islands. There are 6 of them that are even bigger than Karska Island. However, of these islands, other than Karska Island, there are only 12 inhabited islands. The other 22 islands are uninhabited." Smilton raised a brow. "Chairman Sui, you want me to help you steal these islands?" Sui revealed a faint smile. "Accurately speaking, I want these islands to be under my control. I don't have much interest in the islands themselves. I'm only interested in the various resources on these islands. If Karska Island has a decent amount of iron ore, then there's a high chance that the other islands have the same amount of resources." "Yes, that's true." Smilton nodded. "I know that there is an iron ore mine on an island not far from here called Saxon Island. There are people for your Lampari kingdom who went to investigate before, but they felt that it wasn't worth it to transport the iron ore from Saxon Island, so no one cared. I also feel that it's not worth it." Great Magician Taluchi knit his brows. "Chairman, if you want to transport the resources from these islands back, I feel that the cost is too high and it isn't suitable. You only have this feeling because the sea transport isn't developed enough." Sui shook his head and pointed at the bottom of his feet. "But look at where you are right now." Great Magician Taluchi and Smilton were surprised. Then they remembered that the place they were currently in was the warehouse at the bottom of a giant magic ship. This magic ship, called the Unfolding Wings, was just too big. Just the warehouse they were in right now could hold the large wooden ship that they remembered from before. With this kind of large magic ship, the amount of cargo it could carry was several times, or even several dozen times more than the wooden ships from before. Adding in the fact that there was a lower chance of encountering danger on the sea with this large magic ship. So calculating it, the cost of transporting by sea was much lower than before where they had to risk their lives, so it wasn't worth it. It was no wonder Sui was this confident. It was because of the unfolding wings. Seeing the looks of understanding on the two's faces, Sui revealed a smile. He moved his finger and drew a circle on the map. "Actually, compared to the resources on these islands, what I care more about is this sea area." Great Magician Taluchi and Smilton revealed doubtful looks again. This sea area was all seawater. What was there to care about? "Right now, I can't explain the importance of controlling this sea area to you. You'll only understand when the competition for the sea becomes more intense," Sui said with a faint smile. "But no matter what, I need this sea area, and it's best if I can control this sea area. Island Lord Smilton, can you do this for me?" Smilton looked down at the map and thought for a bit before looking back at the various military magic machines in the warehouse. Finally, he looked at the ceiling and floor of the warehouse before saying to Sue with a serious look, "Other than these military magic machines, give me a few more ships. It's best if there's a large ship like this one, and I'll definitely be able to do it." Sue laughed. "There's no problem giving you a few ships, but there's no way to give you a large ship like the unfolding wings for now. This ship took all the strength of our Frestac Chamber of Commerce. It took an entire 8 months to finish. The ones we're making are for our company's ocean transport, so we can't give them to you in the short term." Oh, Smilton was a bit disappointed. "If we don't have such a large ship, I'm afraid our deterrence on the surface of the sea will be much smaller. Things on the sea are very simple. Whoever has the biggest ship has the loudest voice. If there was a large ship like this, I just needed to drive it over, and I could guarantee that all the other ships on the sea would be obedient." Sue patted his shoulder with a smile. "You don't need to be too disappointed. I can't give you such a large ship in the short term, but I can give you some smaller ships. It's true that those ships are smaller than the unfolding wings, but compared to your heaviest ships, they're still much bigger. Moreover, I can guarantee that in terms of performance, those ships can't compare to it at all." Smilton's eyes lit up. "Really? Chairman Sue, could it be that you're planning on giving me a good ship, like the small magic speedboat?" Sue laughed. "That depends on how much sincerity you can take out." Smilton clenched his fist and forcefully slammed it down on his chest as he said in a deep voice, "Chairman Sue, in front of great magician Tolucci, I promise you, I, Smilton, will definitely control every inch of this sea for you. Even if a fish wants to swim across this sea, it has to ask me. No, it has to ask for your permission." Chapter 609. The unfolding wings only stayed in Karska Island for a single night. The next morning, the unfolding wings set sail once again after the large amount of daily necessities and various military magic machines, worth more than 30,000 gold coins, had been shipped off. It sailed for about 80 kilometers to the north of Karska Island and circled around an island that was even larger than Karska Island before heading east. This place was already over 200 kilometers away from the coastline, but with the speed of the unfolding wings, they could only see the black line that represented the coastline in the afternoon. Narvel put down the binoculars in his hand and said to Sue beside him with a smile, "Sir Chairman, it seems like we should have reached our destination very smoothly. This long-distance coastal test is already half a success." Sue nodded with a faint smile, but he couldn't help looking up at the sky that was becoming a bit dark because it was close to dusk. The goal of this long-distance coastal test, other than testing the unfolding wings' long-distance cruising ability, it was also to increase the experience of the unfolding wings' Captain Narvel and the crew members on the unfolding wings. On the Signs continent that wasn't technologically advanced, when sailing on the sea, one could only rely on one's experience most of the time. They couldn't rely on the high-tech satellite positioning systems on Earth to accurately navigate. The reason why Narvel was this happy when he saw the coastline was because even as a captain who was very familiar with the sea, he didn't have full confidence in leading the unfolding wings to their destination. This world's technology was still very far from being able to send out accurate satellites. So he couldn't find fault with Narvel's work at all. Even if he was very helpless in this situation, he still had to sincerely praise Narvel's workability. It had to be known that even for a captain like Narvel, he had spent quite a bit of time to find him. To have a large amount of crew members that could travel the seas, the new flyer had to slowly train them. Up until now, there's the consumption. He thought about it before asking Narvel this. "It's not bad," Narvel replied with a relaxed expression. "It's the same as our previous tests. Currently, we've consumed around 73 tons of magic crystals. According to the mileage, each kilometer consumes around 150 kilograms of magic crystals." "About 150 kilograms? He thought for a moment and nodded. Not bad. This level of loss is completely acceptable. According to the new standard of magic crystals proposed by the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce, a kilogram of New Flyer refined magic crystals contained 1 exabyte of magic. 1 AI of magic It was enough for the newest Xinfei brand magic fan to run for 3 days. This unfolding wings ship naturally needed several times more power than the magic fan. So for every kilometer it traveled on the sea, it would consume 150 exats of magic. With the cost of refining magic crystals for Xinfei merchants, which was 20 gold coins per ton, 150 kilograms per kilometer would only cost 3 gold coins. To Su-E, this large transport magic ship only cost 3 gold coins per kilometer. It was simply free. If it was placed on Earth, it would simply be a fantasy. Of course, this was because magic crystals could be found everywhere on signs, so they weren't worth much. Normal magic crystals were just like normal stones that people didn't care about. New Flyer had already bought 17 magic crystal mines for various places, but it only cost them less than 1,000,000 gold coins. The cost of refining magic crystals was mainly focused on mining the magic crystal mines. There was almost no investment in other aspects, which was why the cost was so low. Based on this, using the unfolding wings magic ship that could carry over 3,000 tons to transport goods, the cost of transport was simply terrifying. But in the past 2 years, with the popularization of the magic machines made by New Flyer and the other companies, people began to pay more attention to the consumption of magic crystals. The price of normal magic crystals on the market didn't change, but the high-quality ones, especially the high-quality ones, had a clear increase in price. Based on this, the people of signs were gradually beginning to realize the importance of magic crystals. Su-E naturally noticed this, so he wildly bought magic crystal mines in the past 2 years and encouraged Avita to continue researching magic crystal refining technology. This was all to prepare for the energy competition that would happen in the near future. Back to the unfolding wings ship, other than the consumption of power, of course there were other aspects of the ship that were damaged. As for the other aspects of the ship, other than the daily necessities of the crew, it was mainly focused on the various details of the cabin. For example, the door of the warehouse suddenly couldn't be opened last night because a screw was loose. Hearing this report, Su-Yi's face sunk. Who was responsible for installing the screw in the warehouse? Write down the name and give him a second grade warning when we go back, as well as deducting his bonus for the month. Other than that, the leader in charge of the warehouse is also responsible, so his bonus for the month will also be deducted, and he will also be given a third grade warning. Narvel secretly stuck out his tongue, thinking that Sir Chairman really was strict. It was just a single screw that was loose, and he actually gave such a severe punishment, even the leader in charge had to be punished. But thinking about it, although the unfolding wings ship was big enough and there was room for these mistakes, it was too dangerous on the sea, so the requirements had to be strict. The president did this because he wanted to establish this concept. As someone who would be living on the unfolding wings ship for most of his life, Narvel supported Su-Yi's actions very much. Narvel also reported the other small problems that occurred on the unfolding wings ship, and Su-Yi also gave the corresponding punishments without any courtesy. With Su-Yi's usual style, when the unfolding wings ship returned to the New Flyer harbor, these punishments would definitely be given. Although it was strict, Narvel was certain that the people who were punished would not complain at all. Su-Yi had absolute prestige in the New Flyer because he was always fair in handling matters. He would punish anyone who made a mistake, and he would not be stingy with his rewards. All the New Flyer employees discussed in private and agreed that as long as they were willing to work hard in the New Flyer, they would receive great rewards. When Narvel was reporting to Su-Yi, the unfolding wing ship was still moving at high speed towards the sea. Su-Yi listened to Narvel's report while looking at the coastline that was getting closer and closer. He suddenly noticed a black smoke rising high into the sky. Su-Yi was shocked as he snatched the binoculars from Narvel's hands and looked at the coastline. Through the binoculars, he could see countless people moving along the coastline, but because it was too far away, he could not see what was happening. Narvel also noticed the movement along the coastline and was about to ask Su-Yi when a loud explosion came from the coastline. It was so far away, but the explosion was still very loud, showing how loud it was. This time, not only did Su-Yi and Narvel notice it, Even the other crew members on the unfolding wings ship were attracted. Everyone looked at the coastline with shock in their eyes. Sue put down the binoculars and said to Narvel in a deep voice, "Send down the order to increase the speed to the Black Rice Harbor." Narvel quickly responded and took out the magic communicator, loudly giving the order to increase speed. Moments later, the hull of the unfolding wings trembled slightly. Then, the gigantic hull began to gradually accelerate. Gradually, it went from a constant speed of 30 kilometers per hour to over 40 kilometers per hour. This speed was the unfolding wings ship's limit, and normally they would not use this speed because it would greatly increase the power consumption. It could even increase the power consumption to twice the normal speed. Moreover, the pressure on the ship would increase by several times, and it would easily cause uncontrollable losses. But in this situation, they could not care that much. The coastline quickly approached, and Sue saw the situation on the coastline through the binoculars, causing his face to sink more and more. This Black Rice port was built on the coast of the Black Rice Wasteland near the Endless Ocean. The purpose was to allow the goods produced by the various factories in the Black Rice Wasteland to be loaded onto ships through this port and then transported to other parts of the continent through the ocean. This harbor was the Black Rice Wasteland's window to the Endless Sea. It was connected to many factories in the Black Rice Wasteland, including New Flyer, so it was very important. Starting from last year, the harbor was only half completed, and New Flyer had already invested over 3 million gold coins in it. Moreover, in order to use this harbor, New Flyer had worked with the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce to build a 500-kilometer-long road through the Black Rice Wasteland. Just this road alone, New Flyer had invested close to 1 million gold coins. From this, it could be seen how important this harbor was to Sue. However, right now, there were countless people charging into the harbor. They were waving their weapons as they slaughtered their way through the harbor. From time to time, large fireballs would fly in and smash into the harbor, causing the entire harbor to be covered in a sea of fire. Chapter 610. Narvel. Immediately send reinforcements to the harbor. Sue gave the order with a calm face. Narvel left with this order. Sue turned to look at the Black Rice Harbor in the sea of flames. His right hand pinched the railing on the deck as a trace of hesitation appeared on his face. These fellows that came out of nowhere to attack the Black Rice Harbor seemed to have several magicians mixed in. Properly speaking, as a 9th-grade magician, he should be participating in the battle against the other side's magicians. But great magician Camilla and Steele, as well as the people of the New Flyer, including Kenner and Hines, were all against him participating in the battle. In their eyes, Sue was the most important chairman of the New Flyer. Even if he was a powerful 9th-grade magician, he shouldn't personally take the risk. If something happened to him, that would be the biggest hit to the New Flyer. Not to mention that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards were equipped with large amounts of military magic machines. Even if they met a great magician like Great Magician Camilla, they could still resist him. There were only a few low-grade magicians in this group, so they shouldn't be a match for them. Thinking of this, Sue let go and gave up the idea of personally fighting. He watched as, under Narvel's orders, the crew of the Unfolding Wings and the 100 human New Flyer guards jumped onto the small magic speedboats that came down from the Unfolding Wings. They went at a very high speed and charged through the waves, heading towards the Black Rice Harbor. Before the New Flyer guards joined the battle, the Black Rice Harbor was filled with enemies, and the Black Rice Harbor couldn't resist at all. But when the New Flyer guards quickly drove the small magic speedboats over, before they even approached the sea, there was already a rain of arrows that covered the entire harbor. This rain of arrows didn't have any blind spots, and they kept coming. The enemies that were wreaking havoc in the harbor couldn't dodge at all. After a while, they fell down like wheat being harvested. When the first small magic speedboat stopped at the pier of the Black Rice Harbor, the enemies in the harbor had already lost their momentum from before and all found cover to avoid them. However, what the enemies never thought was that although they could avoid arrows by hiding behind cover, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards took out a black cylinder and aimed it at the cover. With an explosion, An iron ball covered in flames flew out of the cylinder and hit the cover, creating a deafening explosion sound. Not only was the bunker blown up, but the enemy hiding behind it was also blown up into a pile of broken limbs. Su-yi observed for a while and put down the binoculars. The new flyer guards were equipped with a large number of military magic machines and had a lot of combat experience. In terms of combat strength, they could easily crush any other military force on this continent. Even if there were over 500 enemies that invaded the Black Rice Harbor, in front of 100 fully armed new flyer guards, they were like 500 helpless children, unable to put up any effective resistance. The only ones who could retaliate were the few mages left. After seeing the terrifying might of the military magic machines in the hands of the company's guards, the magicians quickly took the chance to escape. In short, there wasn't a single spell that was released in the later stages of the battle. In just half an hour, the battle in the Black Rice Harbor had ended and the shouts from the distance gradually stopped. Su-yi waved his hand and ordered the Unfolding Wings ship to approach. When the Unfolding Wings ship entered the Black Rice Harbor, seeing that the harbor was completely dark, Su-yi couldn't help knitting his brows. The Black Rice Harbor hadn't been used yet, and it was suddenly destroyed like this. It was fine if it was a financial loss, but the important thing was that this was simply a public provocation. Su-yi's face sunk as he looked over the corpses in the harbor. After seeing it clearly, Su-yi couldn't help being stunned. The corpses of the enemies that were left behind were clearly beastmen. Since the Frestac Chamber of Commerce worked with the other companies to wipe out the beastmen who tried to resist the Frestac Chamber of Commerce, there weren't any beastmen who dared to attack the Frestac Chamber of Commerce in these 2 years. Even the Beastman Independent Legion that was most opposed to humans and had the most extreme style of doing things had already disappeared from the Black Rice Wasteland for a long time. Then where did these beastmen come from? Why did they attack the Black Rice Harbor? This harbor hadn't been used yet, so why did these beastmen attack it? Looking at another corpse, Su-yi couldn't help being stunned. This corpse was clearly wearing the uniform of the Frestac Chamber of Commerce. A trace of sorrow flashed in Su-yi's eyes, and then an uncontrollable rage filled his heart. He loudly shouted at Narvel, "Go and find the survivors for me." Narvel and Su-yi had known each other for a long time, but this was the first time he had seen Su-yi reveal such an angry expression. He was immediately scared and quickly ordered the crew and guards from the Unfolding Wings to search the harbor. Luckily, when he was building the harbor, Su-yi had considered that this was the center of the Black Rice Wasteland, so there would be some risks. Therefore, he had arranged for some hidden fortifications in the harbor. When the enemies attacked, most of the workers and managers in the harbor hid in the hidden fortifications. The beastmen couldn't find them, and most of them survived. But even so, according to the final count, in this sudden attack by the beastmen, there were still 9 workers that died under the blades of the beastmen. Looking at the 9 corpses that were found, Su-yi's face was so gloomy that it looked like water was about to drip out. His heart was filled with self-blame. He clearly knew that it was dangerous to build a harbor here, but he still insisted on doing it. He didn't listen to Kennard and Heinz's advice and insisted on building a harbor here. Now, these 9 workers who were in the prime of their lives had died because of this, and it could be said that it had something to do with him. Staring at the corpses of the 9 workers for a while, Su-yi let out a long breath, and his expression returned to normal. These workers were already dead, so there was no point in continuing to regret. Su-yi didn't like doing this kind of thing. Compared to this, the more important thing was to arrange the funeral arrangements for these workers and to take revenge for them. The person in charge of the Black Rice Harbor also hid in the hidden fortifications to survive. Su-yi called him over and had him calculate the information of the 9 dead workers. Then he would compensate them according to the rules of the new flyer. "Sir Chairman, there are 5 people who aren't from our company. They are from the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce." The person in charge raised a different opinion. Su-yi coldly looked at him. "Aren't the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce people? Since they are working for our new flyer, we should treat them equally." But they are after all workers from the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. If we do this, I'm afraid. Listen to my orders." Sui cut him off. As for President Cruz, I will personally negotiate with him. You just need to follow my arrangements and take the compensation measures. Seeing the cold look on Suyi's face, the person in charge couldn't help shrinking his head back, but he immediately nodded in agreement. After taking care of these matters, he had people find the corpses of 2 beast men on the ground. He threw them into the trunk of a medium-sized transport magic car at the Black Rice Harbor before personally driving it to the east of the Black Rice Wasteland. When night fell, Sui drove the medium-sized transport magic car into the Lampari Kingdom's Western Army camp. The 2 Western Army soldiers in charge of guarding the camp stopped the magic car. Sui stuck his head out of the car and said in a cold voice, "I am Sui. Please pass on a message for me. Just say that I have an urgent matter to discuss with the commander." The 2 soldiers looked at each other, and one of them immediately turned around and trotted into the camp. New Flyer was the main supplier of equipment and daily necessities to the Western Army, so even the commander had to be polite when he saw Sui. After a while, a vice general of the Western Army came out. When he saw Sui, he immediately came over with a wide smile. After the 2 greeted each other, the vice general's eyes fell onto the medium-sized transport magic car behind Sui, and his expression became a bit strange. "Chairman Sui, why didn't you drive your beautiful magic sedan this time?" Sui didn't reply. He walked to the trunk and reached out to pull it open, causing the trunk to fall down. The 2 beastmen corpses inside rolled out and hit the ground, creating loud bangs. The vice general and the soldiers beside him were all shocked. Looking at the corpses on the ground, the vice general knit his brows. "Chairman Sui, what is the meaning of this?" Sui calmly described the attack on the Black Rice Harbor. After the vice general heard this, his expression became even more strange. After thinking about it, he said in an awkward voice, "Chairman Sui, your New Flyer's harbor being attacked, this doesn't seem related to our Western Army, right? Moreover," the vice general paused before continuing, "Chairman Sui, to be honest, your New Flyer's beastmen cleansing operation on the Black Rice Wasteland has offended many beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland, so it's normal for them to retaliate." "Normal?" Sui gave a cold laugh as he kicked the beastman corpse on the ground. Suffering the retaliation of the beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland can be considered normal. But suffering the retaliation of the Sac Kingdom's beastmen, do you still think it's normal? How is this possible? The vice general looked at the 2 beastmen corpses on the ground with a look of shock before squatting down to carefully look over them. After a while, his expression changed. Chapter 611. Sui walked out of the Western Army camp and looked back before slightly knitting his brows. The New Flyer Guards had fought with the beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland many times in the past 2 years, so they had a good understanding of the beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland. So they could easily tell that the beastmen that attacked the Black Rice Wasteland didn't belong to any beastmen tribe of the Black Rice Wasteland. The Black Rice Wasteland was bordered by the Principality of Constantine to the south and the Sac Kingdom to the north. There were no beastmen in the Principality of Constantine, so these beastmen could only have come from the Sac Kingdom. There was a strong proof for this, which was that among the people attacking the Black Rice Wasteland, there were actually magicians. Although for Sui, magicians weren't that rare, for most people on the signs, magicians were very rare. Even in the regular army of the Lampari Kingdom, magicians weren't a high-level battle strength. The beastmen weren't that good at magic, so it was even more impossible for them to have magicians. These beastmen that attacked the Black Rice Wasteland not only had complete equipment and clearly trained fighting methods, they even had magicians. Other than the explanation that they were sent by the Sac Kingdom, there was no other possibility. After Sui made this inference, he brought the corpses of the 2 beastmen to the Western Army camp. One was to give the Western Army a warning. The Sac Kingdom had already made a move on the Black Rice Wasteland, so their next step was to invade the Lampari Kingdom through the Black Rice Wasteland. The Western Army was in charge of guarding the Lampari Kingdom's western border, mainly guarding against attacks from the Black Rice Wasteland to the west and the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom to the northwest. Now that the Sac Kingdom had made a move on the Black Rice Wasteland, the Western Army should make a move. Second, Sui was planning on using this chance to propose a new cooperation plan to the Western Army's commander Varianlantis. He wanted to strengthen the connection with the Western Army and increase the defenses of the border between the Black Rice Wasteland and the Sac Kingdom through the Western Army, creating a stable environment for the Black Rice Wasteland. It would be beneficial for the new flyer and the other companies that had taken root in the Black Rice Wasteland. However, contrary to Sui's expectations, whether it was the warning to Sui or the new cooperation plan, Commander Lantis was indifferent, as if he wasn't interested at all. In the meeting with Sui just now, although Commander Lantis was very polite to Sui, it was clear that his attitude was perfunctory and he wasn't interested at all. Sui was at first. Normally speaking, Sui's warning was deeply related to the Western Army, and the new cooperation plan was very beneficial to the Western Army. If it was before, Commander Landis would definitely agree to Sui's plan and would definitely agree. But this time, even if Sui gave many favorable conditions, Commander Lantis didn't show any signs of relenting. No matter what Sui said, Commander Lantis used excuses to avoid it. After the meeting was over, Sui had just bid farewell to Commander Lantis when he turned around and suddenly understood something. The problem came from the Lampari Kingdom. After Seveni was crowned as the Lampari Kingdom's queen, with the support of the people and the strength she displayed during the Civil War, she obtained the support of all the nobles in the kingdom. In less than half a year, she controlled the entire Lampari Kingdom. Compared to the previous King Eric, Her Majesty Seveni's control over the Lampari Kingdom far surpassed that of the previous King Eric. Sui even believed that as long as Seveni was given a short period of time, she would be able to control the entire Lampari Kingdom. Moreover, because of the civil war that defeated all the opposition forces in the Lampari Kingdom, Seveni's control over the Lampari Kingdom might even surpass Lampuri XIII's. In this situation, Commander Lantis naturally couldn't treat the Western Army as his back garden like before. If something went wrong, Her Majesty wouldn't let him off. According to the strategy of the Lampari Kingdom's army headquarters, the kingdom's main defense forces would be concentrated on the northern border with the Sac Kingdom. The Western Army's main task would be to guard against the harassment of the beastmen on the Black Rice Wasteland. Because they had the Black Rice Wasteland as a buffer, the Lampari Kingdom's western side wasn't too worried about attacks from the west, so they didn't invest that much in the Western Army. The more important thing was that the Lampari Kingdom's finances didn't have the ability to invest in this side. So for Commander Lantis, the best way to deal with this was to honestly guard the western border and not do anything else. After thinking through these problems, Sui understood why Commander Lantis reacted differently, but he was also a bit helpless. Even if his relationship with Seveni was good, when it came to the national policy of the Lampari Kingdom, it was impossible for Seveni to take special care of him and the new flyer. To put it simply, the Western Army couldn't be relied on. If he wanted to create a peaceful environment for the Black Rice Wasteland, he could only rely on himself. After thinking this through, Sui drove the medium transport magic car and quickly left the Western Army's camp. He quickly headed back to Black Rice City that was less than 200 kilometers away from the Western Army's camp. Another year had passed, and Black Rice City had gradually developed from an embryonic form into a city that was gradually perfecting itself. Not only was the living area, the industrial area, and the business area clear, there were also various infrastructures that were gradually built. When he entered Black Rice City, there were street lamps that lit up the sides of the wide road. The light of the magic lamps scattered in all directions, and with the light of the various rooms in the city, the entire city was lit up. Even if it couldn't compare to the large cities on Earth, it was definitely unique in the signs. There were many people who came to Black Rice City to find work, but when they saw the lights at night, they were deeply attracted. According to the statistics of Black Rice City last time, there were already 186,000 people registered in Black Rice City, and there were at least 50,000 people who weren't registered. A city with close to 250,000 people, even in the Lampari Kingdom, it was definitely one of the top cities. In terms of business prosperity, there wasn't a single city in the Lampari Kingdom that could compare to Black Rice City. Su-Yi drove the magic car from the darkness of the Black Rice Wasteland into the bright lights of Black Rice City. The two Black Rice City guards on duty looked over, but they didn't care that much. There were at least 1,000 transport magic cars that came in and out of Black Rice City each day. There were many even at night, so a trivial medium transport magic car naturally wouldn't attract their attention. However, Su-Yi slowed down the car and looked at the two guards. Based on the insignia on the two guards, he could tell that they were guard from the Armani Chamber of Commerce. Black Rice City was managed by the New Flyer, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, the Armani Chamber of Commerce, and the Rimmet Chamber of Commerce. So naturally the defenses were also managed by the four companies. In this regard, the four companies were each in charge of an area of Black Rice City, so this had already become a fixed pattern. Su-Yi didn't have any objections to this pattern before, because he didn't care that much about the defenses. But after the matter of the Black Rice Harbor, Su-Yi found that there was a flaw in this pattern. This pattern was fine in a normal situation, but once there was an emergency and it was a situation that required large amounts of defenses, this pattern was very likely to reveal hidden dangers. Su-Yi drove the medium transport magic car to the gate of the Black Rice City Joint Management Council. When he jumped out, the guard at the gate immediately recognized Su-Yi and quickly invited him in. It was impossible for the important leaders of the four companies to stay in Black Rice City for long periods of time to participate in the management. Normally, the people in the Joint Management Council were the representatives of the four companies. New Flyer was without a doubt the boss of the four companies, so Su-Yi's position in the Joint Management Council was very high. His sudden visit in the middle of the night caused quite a stir. Not long after, the representatives of the four companies who had basically gone to sleep all rushed over. New Flyer's representative was an old employee who had joined the company when New Flyer was established. When he saw Su-Yi, he saw the serious look on Su-Yi's face, and his heart skipped a beat. He had followed Su-Yi for over 5 years, but this was his first time seeing such a serious look on Sir Chairman's face. Could it be that something big had happened? Su-Yi waved his hand at the four representatives and had them sit in front of him. He looked over the four of them, and after thinking for a bit, he asked, "You've been in the Black Rice Wasteland for quite some time, so I'll ask you a question now, and I hope that you can answer truthfully." The four representatives looked at each other with a bit of doubt in their eyes. Chairman Su was this serious, so this question wouldn't be easy to answer. "Sir Chairman, please ask." After being silent for a bit and seeing that no one answered, the New Flyer's representative spoke up. The representatives of the other three companies finally reacted and quickly said, Right, please ask Chairman Su. As long as we know, we will definitely answer." "All right." Su-Yi nodded. "Tell me, how many people do we need? Or to be more specific, what kind of defense do we need to be able to control the Black Rice Wasteland? Even if the Sack Kingdom wants to invade the Black Rice Wasteland, can we fight back?" The four representatives looked at Su-Yi in shock. Chairman Su, he actually wanted to fight the Sack Kingdom. Chapter 612. "Sir Chairman, I understand your feelings and also feel pain and anger for the workers of the company who died at the harbor, but..." Kennard looked at the calm Su-Yi and hesitated a bit before continuing. "Just because of this blindly increasing the strength of our company's guards, isn't this a bit impulsive?" "Blindly?" Su-Yi turned to look at him. "Why do you feel that this method is blind?" Kennard gave a bitter laugh and spread his hands. "Although this word isn't polite, Sir Chairman, I can't understand why you're suddenly investing over 3 million gold coins in the company's guards and gradually increasing the investment each year. According to your plan, why do you want to invest at least 5 million gold coins each year? If it's just to prevent the company's workers from dying in the future, there are many other methods that we can use that will cost less. I've always said that I am a merchant. But looking at it now, Kennard, you really are from the Emma family. Your thoughts as a merchant are much deeper than mine." Su-Yi said with a smile. Kennard knit his brows and said with a sigh, "Sir Chairman, we are only a company. No, for me, the New Flyer is just a tool in my hand." He shook his head. Although the new flyer has developed to this point and is already the best tool, it is still just a tool. My dream is to change the lives of the people of the signs. This goal won't change. Making money is just to achieve this goal. Seeing the expression on Su Yi's face, Kennard knew that there was no meaning in continuing to persuade him. He could only give a sigh and stop discussing this. However, no matter what, Kennard couldn't understand Su Yi's actions. Because several people had died in the Black Rice Harbor, Su Yi suddenly had the idea of controlling the Black Rice Wasteland. If this idea wasn't that strange, then Su Yi's idea of fighting back against the Sac Kingdom after controlling the Black Rice Wasteland really shocked Kennard. Even if the new flyer had developed into a large company and had a strong influence in the surrounding countries, it was still just a company in the end. With the strength of the new flyer and the more important military magic machines produced by the new flyer, it wasn't hard to control the Black Rice Wasteland. After all, the beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland didn't have any organization and their resistance was weak. But if they wanted to fight against the Sac Kingdom, that was just wishful thinking. A country and a chamber of commerce were two completely different concepts. Kennard looked at the side of Su Yi's face, thinking that because the new flyer could control the situation in the Principality of Constantine, he estimated the new flyer's abilities and had the misconception that the new flyer could even fight against the Sac Kingdom. This was a question that Kennard couldn't ask. As the CEO of the new flyer, he was mainly responsible for the management of the company. But as for the direction of the new flyer's development, he could only give suggestions and didn't have any authority. Su Yi had absolute control over the new flyer, so as long as Su Yi made a decision, the others could only listen. This was something that even Kennard couldn't go against. Kennard silently thought for a bit. He had worked with Su Yi for all these years, and their ideals were very similar. So how could he just watch him go down the wrong path? After pausing, Kennard said with a serious look, "Sir Chairman, I hope that you can think this through clearly. Our Chamber of Commerce does indeed have enough strength to strengthen our own defensive forces, but there is a limit to our strength. With the current profitability of our Chamber of Commerce, we can at most maintain no more than 5,000 guards of the same level as the current guards. If we exceed this number, our strength may even decline." Su Yi smiled and asked back, "You think that 5,000 people is very little?" Kennard was stunned. "Of course it's very little. Sir Chairman, don't forget, even if it's Count Wine, he still has 30,000 people under him." Su Yi laughed. "Is 30,000 people strong? Don't forget, Count Wine's 30,000 people couldn't even deal with the 100 people led by Hart." Kennard knit his brows. "You can't count it like that. Sir Chairman, there are many reasons why Count Wine couldn't deal with Captain Hart's 100 guards. If it was a direct confrontation, even if it was a direct confrontation, Count Wine's subordinates couldn't deal with Hart's 100 people." Su Yi waved his hand and interrupted Kennard's words. Kennard was stunned. How is that possible? That's 30,000 people. How could they not deal with a mere 100 people? That's why you and most of the people on this continent are still stuck in the old ways. Su Yi smiled faintly. This world is already completely different from the world you're familiar with. Kennard looked at Su Yi strangely. He was the CEO of New Flyer, so his understanding of New Flyer was much deeper than most people on this continent. But even if it was him, he wasn't optimistic about the scene Su Yi described at all. Why was Su Yi this confident? Su Yi smiled and didn't explain much to Kennard. Although Kennard was the CEO of New Flyer, he was mainly in charge of administrative matters. He was still limited in many aspects. His grasp of the overall situation was far inferior to that of the chairman. Of course, it wasn't just Kennard. Almost everyone on the continent was like Kennard. They couldn't understand Su Yi's thoughts at all. They couldn't be blamed because Su Yi used the mechanical engineering knowledge he brought from Earth to bring magic machines that far surpassed their imaginations. This was equal to a large leap in the level of science technology. It would take some time for people's thoughts to catch up to this change. What Su Yi wanted to use was this period of time where there was a gap. The two fell silent at the same time. The magic sedan they were sitting in continued driving through the northern principality of Constantine that used to belong to Count Wine, but was now ceded to Sue E. This road was part of the Stru Road and was in a half-finished state. There were only 2 lanes open right now, and it was far from the 6 lanes that would be finished. When a magic sedan drove down the road, they could see countless workers from the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Ruhr, the Black Rice Wasteland, the Mirando Duchy, and the Principality of Constantine working on the road. Most of these workers belonged to the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. Only a small part of the workers in charge of supervising the project and providing the magic machines belonged to the New Flyer. The 2 companies had been working together for 4 years now, so the workers on both sides were very familiar with each other, so their work efficiency was very high. According to the estimates of the manager of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce who was in charge of the Stru Road, Suyi's old friend manager Riley, by the middle of next year, the Stru Road would be finished. At that time, from the west coast of the Principality of Constantine to the Kingdom of Ruhr's capital, Caracas City, although it was over 1,000 kilometers, there would always be a smooth road connecting it. If one drove a transport magic car that could maintain a speed of over 40 kilometers an hour, it would only take a single day to get there. If one drove the latest model magic sedan that Sue, E, and Kennard were sitting in, they could maintain a speed of over 60 kilometers an hour, so it would only take around 10 hours. Of course, to complete the Stru Road, the most important part was the cliff between the Principality of Constantine and the Ruhr Duchy. Specifically, it was whether the Stru Road viaduct could be finished. The magic sedan drove the 2 of them on the road for a bit before entering a lush forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. Entering this forest, it was considered entering the territory controlled by the Moonshadow tribe. Before the New Flyer, no one in the Principality of Constantine dared to enter the slight dream forest because it was very likely that they would suffer the revenge of the Moonshadow tribe's elves. However, the forest that had existed quietly for thousands of years was now in an uproar. As soon as they entered the forest, they could hear thunderous sounds coming from afar. Looking up, they could even see a towering tree falling crookedly, smashing into the ground, sending broken branches and dust flying into the air. Sir Chairman, if I didn't personally see it, I really wouldn't have believed that the elves would allow humans to create such a large disturbance in their homeland, even allowing humans to cut down their most precious 1,000-year-old trees. Kennard looked at the giant tree that fell in the distance and spoke in an emotional voice. Sue E revealed a faint smile. If the elves want to develop again and integrate into human society, this is a necessary step. That is because Sir Chairman's charm is different from others. The elves have lived with us humans on the signs for thousands of years, but this is their first time trying to integrate with humans. Kennard said. Suti laughed. He didn't know about the other elves, but in the eyes of the elves of the Night Song tribe and the Moonshadow tribe, there was indeed a strong charm. Otherwise, Elder Alicia and Elder Lysania wouldn't have forced him to marry an elven girl. Thinking of how he was about to see Elder Lysania, Suti couldn't help feeling a headache. He hoped that Elder Lysania would let him go this time and not force him to choose an elven beauty as soon as they met. Chapter 613. Elder Lysania didn't seem like she wanted to force Sue-E to pick elven beauties because she was currently focused on the movements of a giant machine that was 5 meters tall. Her eyes were filled with a thoughtful look from time to time, as if her heart was filled with confusion. But when Sue-E first saw Elder Lysania, he didn't notice her expression. Rather, when he saw what she was wearing, he almost burst out in laughter. This elegant, noble, mysterious, beautiful, and dignified elder of the Moonshadow tribe was currently wearing the uniform of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce workers. There was even a bit of dirt on her white and smooth face. If one only looked at her appearance, it was clear that she was a normal worker. However, the elf elder was completely different from ordinary construction workers. Her uniform, which was as straight as a tube, was devoid of any style or beauty. She still exuded an attractive aura, allowing people to easily distinguish her from the crowd. Only her appearance was a bit out of place, so Sue-E couldn't help laughing. After he couldn't help laughing, He turned to look at the giant machine Elder Lysania was staring at. Seeing the crane in front of the giant machine pick up a 3-meter thick tree trunk and put it to the side, he felt a bit satisfied. This newly developed medium-sized magic crane had a maximum capacity of 50 tons. Compared to the small magic crane that the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce was using that could lift less than 10 tons, it was a giant breakthrough. The amount of work involved in the Stru Road project was very large, so the small magic crane couldn't meet the demand most of the time. With the help of this medium-sized magic crane, there was no doubt that the work would be reduced by quite a bit. Moreover, this medium-sized magic crane was just the beginning. After several years of accumulation, the Magic Machine Development Center had already accumulated enough theoretical foundation and experience in developing various magic machines. There would be even higher-grade magic machines that would be developed in the future. With the help of these magic machines, there was hope for the Stru Road project to be completed. Before this, no one thought that they would be able to build a road that would go over a cliff that was over 50 meters tall. But now, the new flyer had made this a reality. Elder Lysania suddenly turned her head and discovered Su Yi's arrival. Chairman Su, the power of this medium-sized magic crane really isn't bad. It can actually match the power of our clan's ancient war tree. Elder Lysania said. Ancient war tree? Su Yi was stunned. What is that? That's the most powerful war machine of our race. Its power was unstoppable, and it was an invincible existence on any battlefield. Even a great mage can't pose much of a threat to him, Elder Lysania said proudly. Su Yi glanced at her. He really wanted to ask her, since the elves had such powerful weapons, why did they lose to the humans and lose control of the continent? Of course, Su Yi wouldn't be so tactless. Oh, the magic crane we developed is actually this strong? Su Yi said with a smile, but Elder Lysania, this magic crane is not the final product of our company. We will continue developing even stronger construction magic machines in the future. There will be many magic machines that are even stronger than this magic crane. Elder Lysania looked at Su Yi and fell into thought. But contrary to Su Yi's expectations, she didn't refute Su Yi's words at all. Rather, she gave a nod and said with a sigh, I believe that Chairman Su can do this. You have already created many miracles, so I won't be surprised no matter what you do. Su Yi was a bit surprised. With Elder Lysania's strong personality, there must be a reason why she was this obedient to him. It can't be that she wanted to use this kind of attitude to lure him into accepting an elven beauty, right? Facts prove that Su Yi was thinking too much. After feeling emotional, Elder Lysania didn't continue this topic. Rather, she talked to Su Yi about the Stru Road Viaduct project. Elder Lysania had suggested to Su Yi before that they could use the elves' strong control over plants. They could use plants to build a roadbed, which would save quite a bit of money for the new flyer. Su Yi considered safety and stability, so after rejecting the suggestion, Elder Lysania didn't give up. Rather, she really used plants to build a platform in the slight dream forest that went from low to high. This roadbed finally reached the cliff, connecting the kingdom of Ruhr to the principality of Constantine. Elder Lysania brought Su Yi to this roadbed made of plants with a proud look on her face. How is it? Chairman Su, we only used less than 4 months to finish this roadbed, but the stone roadbed you insisted on using would take at least 3 months to finish. If you had taken my suggestion back then, perhaps this road would have been finished by now. Su Yi looked at the 20-meter wide road in front of him that had a slight slope that was made of pure plants, and was speechless. Although this roadbed was made of plants, the surface had been processed by the elves and was very smooth. Other than looking a bit strange, there was no difference from stepping on a solid road. Su Yi turned to get in a magic sedan and drove onto this roadbed. He felt that there was a certain degree of softness in the ground. Although it affected the speed, it made driving very smooth, and there weren't any bumps at all. Compared to this, it was actually much more comfortable than driving on a normal road. After going around it, Su Yi already approved of this roadbed in his heart. The elves really were the most mysterious and ancient race on the continent. They really did have many strange things. But thinking that this thing was made of plants, Su-yi still wasn't assured. Elder Lysania, since you have this ability, why didn't you connect it to the top of the cliff earlier? That way it would be easier for you to enter the kingdom of Ruhr. Su-yi couldn't help asking, why do we have to enter the kingdom of Ruhr? Elder Lysania asked back. It's the opposite. We don't want other humans to enter this forest. This cliff is the best barrier. Su-yi gave a shrug, thinking that he had asked a useless question. The Moon Shadow tribe clearly rejected humans from entering the Slight Dream Forest before, but now that their views had changed, there was this change. After thinking about it, Su-yi continued, how about this, Elder Lysania? We'll keep this roadbed, but we'll also keep building the roadbed we're currently building. I will invest in the Strew Road and split it into two, connecting the two roadbeds. That way, we'll have two choices to connect to the Kingdom of Ruhr. Elder Lysania frowned slightly. Chairman Su, do you know why I hope you can use my proposal? I know. Su-yi smiled and nodded, looking left and right, hinting Elder Lysania to go to the side to talk. Elder Lysania shook her head lightly and waved her hand. A light blue curtain fell and enveloped the two of them. All right, with this small spatial isolation spell, others won't be able to see or hear us. Just say what you want to say. Su-yi looked at the light blue light in amazement, thinking that this thing was clearly a one-sided lens with soundproofing on Earth. He didn't think that there was such a convenient spatial magic. It really opened his eyes. After sighing in admiration, Su-yi looked back at Elder Lysania and said seriously, I think Elder wants to control this road to the Kingdom of Ruhr. If we use your proposal, as long as you want, you can remove this roadbed at any time, which is equivalent to cutting off the road to the Kingdom of Ruhr. Am I right? Elder Lysania nodded lightly. Chairman Su, you are indeed a very smart human. That's right. This is my plan. Do you have any objections? Su-yi smiled and shook his head. I don't have any objections, but I firmly oppose it. You should know very well that this Strew Road is extremely important to the overall strategy of our Chamber of Commerce. So no matter what, I need this road to be under my control. According to your plan, whether this road is connected or not depends on your wishes, then building this road is meaningless to me. It's not as serious as you say. Elder Lysania slowly shook her head. I'm only worried about the extreme situation. It's very rare for such a situation to occur, so you don't have to worry about this problem. This is different. This road to our Chamber of Commerce is as important as the arteries of the human body, so no matter what, I have to control it. Elder Lysania, on this point, there is no room for discussion. Su-yi said in a deep voice, whether you are willing or not, I will insist on building another roadbed. Elder Lysania's face sank. Chairman Su, I always thought you were our Moon Shadow tribe's staunchest friend and partner. Now you want to completely fall out with us over this matter? I don't have such thoughts. Su-yi revealed a smile, but as for controlling this road, I have to obtain it. So this time, I came with sincerity. Sincerity? Elder Lysania was still looking at Su-yi. After dealing with Su-yi so many times, she was very clear that the sincerity that Su-yi spoke of was referring to some tangible benefits. Elder Lysania, if you can make concessions on this matter, then I will recruit 1,000 elven warriors from your Moon Shadow tribe into my personal guard. Su-yi said. Elder Lysania was startled. Letting 1,000 precious elven warriors into Su-yi's personal guard. What benefits would that bring to the Moon Shadow tribe? Where was Su-yi's sincerity? As if seeing through Elder Lysania's thoughts, Su-yi gave her a reassuring smile. After these 1,000 elven warriors enter my personal guard, I will provide them with a full set of individual military magic machines for free. I will also allow them to bring them back to the Moon Shadow tribe when they retire from my personal guard. Hearing this, Elder Lysania's eyes suddenly lit up. Chapter 614. It was the beginning of summer yet again. Just like in previous years, the heat waves engulfed the entire Principality of Constantine. Even though Su-yi's private territory was located to the north of the Principality of Constantine, it still couldn't escape the heat waves. The entire territory was bathed in the unparalleled power of summer. The natives of the Principality of Constantine were naturally very adapted to this climate. The employees of the New Flyer had already been here for several years and had long since adapted to this special climate. However, the people who came from other parts of the continent were extremely uncomfortable with the heat that was already as hot as late summer, even though it was just the beginning of summer. Everyone's body was more or less limp due to the heat wave, to the extent that even their movements that were usually extremely smooth were a little out of shape. Bang! The 30-kilogram round steel pipe fell to the ground with a muffled sound, at the same time kicking up a cloud of dust. Hart shook his head and waved his hand. Next! The person standing at the center of the field suddenly had a dejected expression. His lips moved, and his face was full of unwillingness. In the end, he didn't say anything and walked out of the field dejectedly. Heinz, who was sitting beside Hart, frowned as he watched the other robust man behind him walk into the field. I'm afraid not many people will pass this test, right? Hart lowered his head to look at the form in his hand and grunted in agreement. So far today, only 83 people have passed. That's too little. Heinz couldn't help but say. At this rate, who knows how long it will take to recruit 1,000 people? Hart shrugged. In any case, the chairman said that it would be better to have nothing than to have something substandard. This test must be carried out strictly according to the standards he set. Those who don't meet the standards will be eliminated without exception. Heinz slowly shook his head. He only wants to recruit 1,000 private guards. Although it's not wrong to make the requirements a bit stricter, it's too ridiculous to be this strict. It's fine if he wants these people to have strong enough bodies, but why does he have to require them to have flexible minds? It's not like he's recruiting staff. The chairman only wants his private guards to be able to easily control the military magic machines. This requirement is already common among the guards of our Chamber of Commerce. Hart said, after all, as the guild leader's personal guard, how could I not know how to use military magic machines? Heinz thought about it and was a little puzzled. I don't understand. If he really wanted to make such a request, why didn't he just transfer some of the guards from the Chamber of Commerce to be his personal guards? In any case, the entire New Flyer is his. He could do whatever he wants. Who would dare to have any objections? Hart laughed and said, Vice President, aren't you giving your opinion right now? Of course. Sir President said that this is to clearly distinguish the authority between the Chamber of Commerce's guards and his personal guards, so as to avoid future troubles. What trouble could there be? Heinz was even more puzzled. He turned to look at a candidate who had just finished the test and thought that he was thinking too much. Although the New Flyer had already developed to a large scale and could be considered a first-class chamber of commerce in the Lampari Kingdom, if the New Flyer was owned by Sue-E alone, no one would oppose it. Since it was like this, why did he have to do something superfluous and recruit other human guards? These newly recruited guards were obviously not as reassuring as the guards who had served the Chamber of Commerce for several years, and their abilities were definitely not as good. If he wanted a personal guard, the guards of the Chamber of Commerce would be more suitable. Moreover, he didn't only do this in front of the human guards. This time, he spread the news that he wanted to recruit a large number of private guards for his territory. Not only did it include 1,000 human guards, but it also included 1,000 elven guards and 1,000 dwarven guards. Moreover, according to the information he secretly revealed, he might even recruit 1,000 Beastman guards from the Black Rice Wasteland. If this kind of private guard was formed, it would become a multi-race alliance. These other races didn't have a good relationship with humans. They didn't like each other. If they were put together, this private guard wouldn't be peaceful. Heinz continued to watch Sue-E recruit private guards for a while before he finally couldn't sit still. He came to find Sue-E with a worried look. Sue-E was currently in the New Flyer's Magic Machine Development Center, discussing a strange device with Camby and the other engineers. Only when Heinz forcefully patted his shoulder did he notice Heinz's arrival. When Heinz asked him about the recruitment of private guards, he was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Based on his expression, it seemed like he didn't care about this matter at all. Heinz, I feel that you don't need to worry about this. The treatment of becoming my private guards is good. So even if they don't like each other, it's impossible for anything to happen. But Heinz still wanted to say something, but Sue grabbed his shoulder and enthusiastically pointed at the strange device everyone was talking about. All right, don't worry about these small things. Look at this. This is what I really care about and what you, as the vice chairman, should pay attention to. Heinz couldn't help rolling his eyes. He knew that with Sue-Yi's attitude, no matter how he asked, Sue-Yi wouldn't reply. But he had known Sue-Yi for all these years, so he knew that Sue-Yi wouldn't do anything meaningless. He suddenly wanted to recruit all these private guards. He definitely had his long-term plans. Heinz was already in a half-retired state, but he suddenly came all the way from Banda City to the Principality of Constantine because he suddenly heard that Sue-Yi wanted to recruit private guards. He couldn't hold back the concern he had for Sue-Yi and the new flyer, so he wanted to ask Sue-Yi about this. Although he hadn't asked Sue-Yi about his actual plans, based on Sue-Yi's expression, he definitely already had his plans, so naturally he didn't need to worry. Thinking of this, Heinz shook his head and put down the worry in his heart. He focused on the strange device in front of him. After looking at it for a while, Heinz seemed to have understood something. This is very similar to the wind magic engine. Sue-Yi laughed and patted Heinz's shoulder as he loudly said, "You really are my old friend," recognizing it with a single glance. That's right, this is the newly developed fire magic engine. Heinz's eyes opened wide. It's actually the fire magic engine? It's finally been developed? That's right, Sue-Yi said with a laugh. How about it? Aren't you very excited? Heinz kept nodding. This fire magic engine had been developed 3 years ago, and New Flyer had invested a large amount of manpower, but there hadn't been much progress. As Sue-Yi's oldest partner, Heinz knew how important this fire magic engine was to Sue-Yi. He also knew how much effort Sue-Yi had invested in this. This was something that had troubled Sue-Yi for a long time. It could be considered the most difficult research project since the Frestec Chamber of Commerce was founded. Now that it had finally been developed, even if Heinz didn't understand what this fire magic engine meant, he was still very excited. Great, it's finally a success, Heinz said with a nod with a smile. This is good. Sue, what did you say would happen with this fire magic engine? He couldn't help shaking his head with a smile. Heinz clearly didn't understand this thing at all, but he was still this excited. It was clear that it was because of him. Sue-Yi's heart was moved. He took Heinz's shoulder and pointed at the fire magic engine as he explained, "Heinz, you should know that our company's magic car hasn't been able to break through 60 kilometers an hour. You said that this is because the wind magic engine has a natural limit. Without a major breakthrough in mechanical performance, it's very hard to break through this limit with just the wind magic engine alone." Heinz said, "According to what you said, with this fire magic engine, the magic car can break through 60 kilometers an hour?" Sue-Yi laughed. "It's not just 60 kilometers an hour. Let me tell you, with this fire magic engine, the magic car can even break through 200 kilometers an hour." Heinz was stunned. 200 kilometers? Isn't this too exaggerated? No. This isn't exaggerated at all. 200 kilometers is already very slow. The goal in my heart is to break through 400 kilometers at the very least. Moreover, as long as we keep developing the fire magic engine and using the magic airship, it isn't impossible for the magic airship to break through 1,000 kilometers an hour. Heinz shook his head. "You're speaking nonsense. 1,000 kilometers in an hour. It's impossible just thinking about it." Sue-Yi revealed a smile and looked at Camby. Camby gave a soft cough before saying with a serious look, "Vice Chairman Heinz, Sir Chairman is speaking the truth. According to our current calculations of the fire magic engine, in theory, it is possible for a magic machine equipped with the fire magic engine to break 1,000 kilometers per hour. Of course, this is only in theory right now. To achieve this goal, we need large amounts of research and practice." The dwarves didn't like to lie. If Heinz still doubted Sue-Yi's words, now that Camby said this, he had no choice but to believe it. 1,000 kilometers an hour? Just thinking about it, Heinz felt dizzy. Even if it was only in theory, This was too unbelievable. After thinking for a bit, Heinz couldn't help saying to Sue, and not to mention 1,000 kilometers an hour, even if it's only 400 kilometers an hour, isn't that too fast? Running from one end of the Lampari kingdom to the other is only 1,000 kilometers. According to what you said, wouldn't it only take 2 hours to run from one end to the other? Is there a need to be this fast? Sue revealed a faint smile. I say, Heinz, isn't your heart too small? The Lampari kingdom is only 1,000 kilometers from one end to the other, but the Kamla Empire and the Malar Empire are far more than that. Heinz rolled his eyes at Sue. He thought that it wasn't that his heart was too small, it was that his heart was too big. The Lampari kingdom was only a small country in the signs. How could it be compared to the Kamla Empire and the Malar Empire? The scene of him recruiting Su Yi's personal guards flashed in his mind. Heinz suddenly had a terrifying thought, and he couldn't help taking a cold breath. If Sui really thought this, his heart wasn't just too big. It was simply a fantasy. Chapter 6:15. Even if the Principality of Constantine had a hot climate for most of the year because of geography, once summer came, it wasn't hotter than the other countries on the signs. Moreover, if they really compared it, they had a bigger advantage. It was that they were close to the sea, so they could enjoy the coolness of the sea at any time. Under Su Yi's instructions, the new flyer had developed a large section of the beach. It was for the new flyer's employees to relax, but because this section of the beach was very beautiful and had enough facilities, it attracted countless people who treated this place as a good tourist spot. Every summer, this place would be filled with people and it would be very lively. It actually brought quite a bit of tourism income to Su Yi's territory. Su Yi, you're opening your territory to all these normal people. Is it really good? 70 looked at the lively scene on the beach through her binoculars before turning to Su Yi to ask this. Su Yi gave a shrug. What's wrong with this? My territory is currently worrying about population, so if more people come here and increase the popularity of this place, it is something to be happy about. 70 looked at Su Yi with a coquettish look in her eyes. So you didn't hesitate to use large amounts of money to steal people from Bana City? Su Yi gave a laugh and avoided this question. He asked 70 back, Don't talk about me, your majesty. You abandoned the millions of citizens of the Lampari kingdom and secretly came to my place for a vacation. Is this really good? 70 spread her arms and stretched out. She let out a long sigh and said with a faint smile, No matter how responsible your majesty is, you still need to have your own time, right? Then again, I didn't come for a vacation this time. Rather, I came to discuss business with you. Speaking of this, it is also considered business. Su Yi laughed. Then, Honorable Queen, since we're discussing business, why are you wearing such a cool bikini? Don't tell me you intend to rely on your charming figure to make me lose my judgment, and thus increase your bargaining chip? 70 pursed her lips into a smile. She looked down at her new light pink bikini, and her face was a bit red, looking a bit shy. Is my figure qualified to affect your judgment? Of course. Su Yi nodded seriously. 70, even if you throw away the excitement of your identity as the queen, just you alone is attractive enough. Really? 70 had a pleasantly surprised look in her eyes. How does he compare to Steel? This, Su Yi revealed a smile. Still is my wife. There is no one who can compare to her in my heart. This kind of comparison isn't fair to you. 70 gave a sigh before revealing a normal smile. She looked over Su Yi. All right, I've already changed my clothes. What about you? Su Yi looked down at the shirt he was wearing and shook his head. Liz and the others should have already prepared it for me. I'll change at the beach. The two left Su Yi's private manor and came to the cliff behind the manor. Under the cliff was Su Yi's private beach. When Su Yi, Steel, Liz, and Linda went down to play, it was Su Yi and Steel who flew down with one person each. Then there were more visitors, and adding in the fact that Evita, Akali, and the others often came to play, they all liked to swim in the sea. Su Yi installed a wind-powered elevator not far from the platform to make it easier to go up and down. Su Yi came to the elevator And when he was about to open it, 70 called out to him. Turning back, 70 reached out her hands to Sue-E and said with a smile, "Sue-E, carry me down." Sue-E was surprised and slightly knit his brows. "This isn't good, Your Majesty. If others see this, I don't care, but it will affect your reputation." "It won't." 70 shook her head and gave a chuckle. "Today is a rare chance for me to relax. Let me be willful for once, all right?" Sue-E and 70 had known each other for a long time, but he had never seen 70 act like this before. Although 70's appearance wasn't as beautiful as Steel and Princess Caroline, she was still very good-looking. Moreover, she had always been very strong and calm, rarely acting like a girl. Now that she suddenly acted like this, Sue-Yi's heart couldn't help skipping a beat. After thinking about it, Sue-Yi shook his head with a smile. He walked over and reached out to grab 70's waist. Using his magic, he flew down from the high cliff. When they were in the air, 70 couldn't help calling out in surprise. When Sue-Yi quickly fell down with her in his arms, 70 kept calling out in surprise, as her voice was filled with excitement and joy. Sue-Yi couldn't help shaking his head. Although 70 was the queen of the Lampari kingdom, she was still a little girl in her 20s. In the end, she still had the appearance of a girl. After a while, the two landed on the soft beach at the bottom of the cliff. 70 let out a soft breath and patted her chest, like she was still a bit shocked. "Sue-Yi, actually I've always wanted to experience the feeling of flying in the sky. It really is as I imagined. It really is. Too exciting." Sue-Yi couldn't help laughing. "I say, Your Majesty, if you want to fly in the sky, any magician can carry you like this. How hard is it?" 70 shook her head. "It's easy to find a magician, but it's impossible to find a magician who can carry me into the sky." "Why?" Sue-Yi was surprised. 70 looked at Sue-Yi, and it was hard to tell if her eyes were filled with pleasant surprise or rebuke. "Because other than you, there isn't a magician who would dare to carry me into the sky like this." Sue-Yi rolled his eyes. "You asked for this yourself. You can't blame me." "Of course I don't blame you," 70 said with a faint smile. "Being able to fly in the sky has been my dream since I was young. But it's a pity that I don't have talent for magic. Otherwise, I would have been addicted to studying magic. I wouldn't be like this, sitting on this throne that I don't like, racking my brains for the complicated matters of the kingdom." Sue-Yi shook his head with a bitter smile. "For the citizens of the Lampari kingdom, this is a loss you have to bear. I can't help you with this, but I can help you with other things. For example, if you want to fly in the sky, you don't need to find a magician to carry you. You just need to buy our company's new product, the Magic Airship. You can fly freely in the sky, and you can fly for as long as you want." 70 looked at Sue-Yi with a bit of a smile. "Sue-Yi, I've found that you're becoming more and more of a profiteer. At this time, you actually didn't forget to promote your company's new product to me." Sue-Yi immediately complained, "I'm recommending you with a conscience, all right? The Magic Airship is our company's new product. The technology far surpasses all the magic machines our company has before. It represents the highest level of technology in the world. With this Magic Airship, you could be like a magician with wind magic, freely flying in the sky. Think about it. Isn't this attractive enough?" I admit that it is very attractive." 70 nodded. When Sue-Yi was prepared, waiting for her to say, but 70 revealed a sly smile as she continued. "So Sue-Yi, I'm planning to order 100 magic airships from your company. What do you think?" "Huh?" Sue-Yi was stunned. Seeing the smile on 70's face, Sue-Yi instantly understood. In the end, 70 had come prepared this time. It was clear that she already knew about the magic airships that New Flyer had developed and wanted to order them. Now she had followed Sue-Yi's words to make this request. Thinking of this, Sue-Yi felt a bit angry and a bit funny. He shook his head at 70. "I say, Your Majesty, it isn't a bad thing that you want to buy magic airships. Why are you beating around the bush? It's very simple. It's because I don't have money." Sue-Yi snappily said, "You want to buy magic airships if you don't have money? And you want to buy 100 at once? Let me tell you, our company's price for each magic airship is 300,000 gold coins. So 100 of them is 30 million gold coins. All right, calculating it like this, your Lampari kingdom really doesn't have money. Then how do you want to solve this problem? 70 revealed a faint smile. Su-e, our Lampari kingdom indeed can't pay a large sum of 30 million gold coins at once. But your new flyer also can't give us 100 magic airships at once, right? Yes. Su-e helplessly nodded. The production capacity problem had always been an old problem for New Flyer. Although, because of the increase in staff and the automatic production magic machines developed by Sanchali, their production capacity had increased. As the New Flyer continued to develop and the magic machines became more popular, New Flyer received more and more orders, and their production capacity couldn't meet the demand. Especially after 70 was crowned the queen of the Lampari Kingdom, and the New Flyer returned to the Lampari Kingdom. With the addition of the Lampari Kingdom's large and mature market, there was an explosive increase in orders. During this time, everyone in New Flyer had been very busy. Even their vacation time had decreased by quite a bit. Since we can't satisfy each other's demands at once, why don't we make this transaction as long as possible? 70 continued. Su-e, I've heard that when the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce sells their new villas, they allow customers to use a more flexible transaction method. Su-e was surprised. You're talking about installment payments. Chapter 6:16. Installment payment was a suggestion that Su-e had given Chairman Cruz before. Because this method of payment was more flexible, it could allow people who couldn't afford it all at once to have a new type of villa that they dreamed of, so it was very well received once it was introduced. The Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce's new villa district was meant for the rich of Bana City, but because of this installment payment method, many normal families in Bana City could afford a villa that they wanted, which greatly increased the sales volume of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. Just with this suggestion, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce's annual income from housing sales had increased by 3 times. Chairman Cruz was naturally very grateful to Su-e. But because the transportation and information flow on the signs wasn't as smooth as on Earth, and this world didn't have a complete trust system, this method could only be implemented on a small scale and was very limited. Other than suggesting this to Chairman Cruz, Su-e didn't recommend this to the other companies. As for the New Flyer, because the New Flyer's production capacity wasn't enough and the New Flyer had never taken the initiative to promote themselves, naturally, they didn't use this method. Now that 70 suddenly mentioned that she wanted to pay in installments, Su-e couldn't help being surprised. But thinking about it, this suggestion was very feasible. Although the Lampari Kingdom's financial situation wasn't good, it was still a country. Even if they didn't have gold coins, they still had a large amount of resources. Although there were many uncontrollable risks when making deals with a country, the Lampari Kingdom was currently controlled by 70. Towards this queen, Su-e had a good understanding of her and had enough trust in her. As long as 70's control over the Lampari Kingdom didn't weaken, he could be assured when making deals with the Lampari Kingdom. Not to mention that the New Flyer was currently cooperating with the Lampari Kingdom, so they had a high dependence on the New Flyer, so naturally they were willing to strengthen their relationship with the New Flyer. Installment payment was a long-term deal, so it was a way to strengthen their relationship. As for the Lampari Kingdom's ability to pay, Su-e wasn't too worried. Now New Flyer and the Lampari Kingdom's joint venture magic machine factories were all over the Lampari Kingdom. So far, there were a total of 76 factories that could produce all kinds of household magic machines, including some production magic machines. Just last month, the household magic machines produced by the 76 joint venture factories had already surpassed the output of New Flyer. Even if there was a difference in quality and they couldn't compete with Xinfei brand household magic machines in the high-end market, in terms of low and medium-end household magic machines, they could compete with the household magic machines of the magic machine companies from before. In the Lampari Kingdom, because these factories were joint ventures with a New Flyer, they could be branded as New Flyer. Adding in the fact that they were local factories of the Lampari Kingdom, naturally they received the support of most of the citizens of the Lampari Kingdom. Other than this, the Lampari Kingdom also sold these products to the surrounding 6 countries, earning large amounts of gold coins from this. Even with Su Yi's suggestion, the Lampari kingdom even used special channels to smuggle large amounts of household magic machines to the Sack kingdom, receiving many benefits from the Sack kingdom. According to the data that the Lampari kingdom had provided to the new flyer, in just 3 months of last year, the Lampari kingdom had earned a large profit of over 2 million gold coins from the joint venture factories. Through this income, the Lampari kingdom's finances had earned close to 500,000 gold coins. It made the Lampari kingdom's yearly income break 3 million gold coins. Now that half of the year had passed, the Lampuri kingdom's treasury had already collected over 2 million gold coins in taxes from the magic machine industry. Adding in the taxes from the magic machine industry and the other industries, the kingdom's treasury had earned a high income of over 3,400,000 gold coins just from this. According to this trend, by the end of this year, the Lampari kingdom's yearly income would break an unprecedented 5 million gold coins. Since the Lampari kingdom was founded, in the 600 years of history of the Lampari kingdom, there had never been a year where their finances were as good as this year's. With a good financial situation, Seveni had enough confidence to reform the Lampari kingdom. It had only been half a year since Seveni's coronation, and the people of the Lampari kingdom had greatly changed. This had increased Seveni's prestige in the Lampari kingdom and increased her control over the kingdom. If it wasn't for the situation in the Lampari kingdom becoming more stable, how could Seveni as the queen have the time to come to the Principality of Constantine? There's no problem with installment payments, but Seveni, the total price of 100 magic airships is 30 million gold coins. Even if it's 100 years in installments, you have to pay back 300,000 gold coins each year. Moreover, this is on the basis that I don't ask for any interest. Not to mention that I clearly won't accept a term as long as 100 years. Sui thought about it before speaking with a serious look. It's very clear that I also won't accept a term as long as 100 years. How about this? I suggest that the installments be 20 years. What do you think? Seveni asked. 20 years. Sui knit his brows. Even if you don't calculate the interest, you still have to pay 1,500,000 gold coins each year. Although your Lampari kingdom's finances aren't bad right now, this will create quite a bit of pressure. If it's just for 100 magic airships, I don't recommend you make this choice. Seveni revealed a faint smile. Who said that we have to pay the same amount each year? Our kingdom's finances aren't enough right now. So, in the beginning, we'll only pay a small amount. When the kingdom's finances become better, we'll pay a higher amount. It's fine as long as it's 20 years. As for the specific amount, we can discuss it in detail. This is a method. But Seveni, why do you think that I'll agree to this? This proposal has no benefits for our new flyer. Although we are friends, as the chairman of a new flyer, I can't agree to this. Sui said. I understand. Seveni said with a smile. Seveni said with a smile. So other than this proposal, I have another cooperation plan. I wonder if you're interested? What is it? Sui was a bit curious. What benefits does it have for our new flyer? Of course it's good for you. Seveni nodded. Sui, didn't you go to see Commander Lantis before? Moreover, you suggested to him that the Western Army should strengthen their defenses on the Black Rice Wasteland to prevent the Sack Kingdom from invading, right? Sui wasn't surprised that Seveni knew about this, but he was surprised that she would suddenly mention this matter and what she had just said. We don't have the ability to control the Black Rice Wasteland right now, because the investment is too big and the kingdom's finances can't support this kind of consumption. But our Lampari kingdom doesn't have money. Sui, your new flyer is very rich. Seeing Seveni smile, Sui's expression became strange. Could it be, this cooperation proposal is very simple. Your new flyer will pay, and our Lampari kingdom will pay. I can mobilize some of the Western Army to take orders from your new flyer. As long as it's related to the Black Rice Wasteland, you will have full command of the Western Army. Although he had guessed a bit, Sui was still very shocked. If Seveni said this, wasn't it equal to handing the Western Army to him? As the queen of the Lampari kingdom, giving the army of the kingdom to a company, and it was the chairman of a company that wasn't in the Lampari kingdom. This was simply shocking. 70. Aren't you afraid of being scolded to death by the people of the Lampari kingdom if they knew about this? 70 gave a soft snort. If anyone dares to oppose, I'll have them think of a way to earn the 30 million gold coins. If they don't have the skills, then obediently shut up. Seeing the dignity in 70's eyes, Sue-yi couldn't help smiling. 70 rarely said this before, but after being the queen for half a year, she naturally had this dignity. All right, I have to admit that this proposal is very tempting to me. But 70, I still don't feel that this is enough for me to agree to your proposal of paying in installments. Because from your words, I heard another layer of meaning. 70, you're planning on having me take care of all the expenses of the Western Army? Of course. 70 gave a shrug. 70 gave a shrug. If I had enough money, why would I take the risk of having many people oppose me? All right, I can only refuse. He shook his head. Unless you can really give the Western Army to me, I don't feel that doing this will benefit me and the new flyer at all. If this isn't enough, I'll add another condition. 70 said with a smile. 70 said with a smile. Not only on the Black Rice Wasteland, even on anything related to the Principality of Constantine, the Western Army will still be under your command. What do you think? Seeing 70 smile, Su-yi's heart was shocked, but his expression didn't change. All right, we have a deal. Chapter 617. 70's trip to the Principality of Constantine this time was to meet with Su-yi to discuss the cooperation between the new flyer and the Lampari Kingdom. But according to her own words, she was using this as an excuse to relax for 2 days. She had indeed achieved this goal. Other than the matter of renting the Western Army to the new flyer that she had personally discussed with Su-yi, the rest of the matters related to the factories between the new flyer and the Lampari Kingdom were all discussed by her subordinates with the new flyer. Correspondingly, Su-yi didn't care about these matters. As for the specifics of the negotiations, he left them to Kennard and the other managers of the company while he played with 70 for 2 days. According to 70, other than Su-yi, there was no one else in the Lampari Kingdom who was like Su-yi, not having any scruples in front of her. He treated her as a normal friend and let her enjoy herself. During these 2 days, other than taking 70 to swim in the sea and enjoy the sun on the beach, Su-yi also enjoyed the thrill of car racing in the territory with 70. They even boarded the small magic speedboat and charged through the waves on the sea. On the final day, Su-yi rode the magic airship with 70, letting her experience the feeling of freely flying through the air. After riding it, the excited 70 directly asked Su-yi to give her a magic airship as soon as possible for her to use. This magic airship couldn't be placed in the Lampari Kingdom's budget. It was completely paid for by 70's personal finances. It had to be known, although 70 was the queen of the Lampari Kingdom, her personal finances weren't rich. Now that she was willing to take out 300,000 gold coins to buy a magic airship, it could be seen how much she liked the magic airship. 2 days later, 70, who had finished her short trip to the Principality of Constantine, returned to the Lampari Kingdom. Because of her arrival, new flyer who had been on high alert could finally let out a sigh of relief and return to their daily lives. When summer came, it was the peak sales period for new flyers' household magic machines. In just June, according to the final statistics, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had sold 360,000 magic fans, over 80,000 magic air conditioners, and over 30,000 magic refrigerators. Just through these 3 household magic machines that were the most needed in summer, New Flyer had earned a shocking 1,570,000 gold coins in June. In the magic machine department, New Flyer's magic cars were very popular in the Kingdom of Ruhr. First was the 4,000 small and medium transport magic cars and 700 large transport magic cars. Just with the transport magic cars, New Flyer had earned a profit of 600,000 gold coins. Next was the magic sedans. Because all the nobles and merchants in the Kingdom of Ruhr wanted them. Once they were introduced, the magic sedans sold in large amounts in the Kingdom of Ruhr. In just June, the magic sedans had sold over 300 units in the Kingdom of Ruhr, giving New Flyer a profit of 50,000 gold coins. Although this number was much lower than the profits of the other departments, Sui believed that the market for the magic sedans was very wide. When the living conditions of the citizens of the Kingdom of Ruhr gradually improved, the sales of the magic sedans would explode like the sedans on Earth. Even in the Lampari Kingdom, there were already signs of this. New Flyer's cooperation with the Lampari Kingdom didn't include magic cars, so when the magic sedans were sold in the Lampari Kingdom, they were considered imported goods. They had to pay a certain tariff, so they were forced to sell at a higher price. But even like this, the magic sedans were still very popular in the Lampari Kingdom. As the origin of the magic sedans, almost all the nobles and merchants in the Lampari Kingdom had to have a magic sedan. If you still rode in a horse carriage, it was simply a shame and you didn't have the face to go out. What Sui really cared about was that there were some citizens in the Lampari Kingdom that had a demand for magic sedans. These commoners weren't nobles or large merchants, but they were also very interested in magic sedans. But these citizens didn't have the financial power to take out close to 1,000 gold coins to buy a magic sedan. So Sui considered doing the same thing as on Earth and selling magic sedans in installments. Although there was a bit of risk in doing this in the signs, considering the market, Sui felt that this method was worth it. However, even if these citizens were ignored, the magic sedans had sold over 600 units in the Lampari Kingdom last month, bringing a profit of over 100,000 gold coins to New Flyer. As for the transport magic cars and the large and medium-sized passenger magic cars, there was an explosive increase in sales. In June, these two magic cars had sold a shocking 13,000 units in the Lampari Kingdom. Just based on this, New Flyer had earned a terrifying profit of close to 2 million gold coins. Adding in the profits from the bicycles, tires, and production magic machines, New Flyer had earned a total profit of over 5 million gold coins in June. Even if all the expenses were thrown out, New Flyer had earned a net profit of over 3 million gold coins in this month. And this wasn't counting the profits from the military magic machines at all. Of course, in terms of military magic machines, New Flyer didn't earn that much money. The ceasefire agreement with Count Wine allowed Sui to obtain large amounts of territory, but he also needed to provide large amounts of military magic machines to Count Wine. Now that Sui had reached an agreement with 70, Sui was basically renting the Western Army from 70. In order to increase the battle strength of the Western Army, Sui naturally had to equip them with military magic machines. Even if Sui knew that it was impossible for him to take back the military magic machines from the Western Army, which was equivalent to giving them away for free, he was lacking in manpower right now. If he could obtain the support of the Western Army, many things could be easily solved. With New Flyer's current financial resources, it was enough to support this consumption. After July, even if the weather was hot, the Lampari Kingdom's Western Army, equipped with large amounts of military magic machines provided by New Flyer, set out and headed into the Black Rice Wasteland. If the Western Army dared to do this before, it would cause the beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland to resist. They would think that this was a human kingdom invading the Black Rice Wasteland to steal the beastmen's land. But this time, the beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland didn't react at all. When the Western Army passed by the beastmen tribes, they were warmly welcomed by the beastmen and received large amounts of supplies. It was clear that this was the effect of New Flyer. When the Frestac Chamber of Commerce came to the Black Rice Wasteland to invest in factories, they were viewed as enemies by all the beastmen. But after several years of development, the Frestac Chamber of Commerce and the other human companies had received the full recognition of the beastmen. The reason was very simple. New Flyer and the other human companies had given them a better life. After entering the Black Rice Wasteland without any obstructions, the Western Army didn't immediately approach the border between the Black Rice Wasteland and the Sack Kingdom. Rather, they cooperated with New Flyer and the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce to begin building fortifications at the border. These fortifications were different from the brick walls they used to build on the border. Rather, they used the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce's most mature reinforced concrete structure. When they helped build the dam upstream of the Sandy River, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce had used this structure to build the dam with the support of Sui. Now that they had several years of experience, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce was very proficient with this structure. Adding in the endless funds and resources from New Flyer, this fortification was built very quickly. In just a month's time, more than 30 kilometers of fortifications had been built. If one looked at it from the outside, this fortification was a bit like the Great Wall, but it was a bit smaller. It was over 5 meters tall and around 3 meters wide. But compared to the Great Wall, this fortification was without a doubt much stronger. Using reinforced concrete as a fortification, not to mention blocking the attacks of the normal armies of this world. Even if Su used a powerful 9th grade spell, he would only be able to create a hole in it. When this fortification to the north of the Black Rice Wasteland was finished, it could be said that the Sac Kingdom would be able to go south through the Black Rice Wasteland. The Black Rice Wasteland wouldn't be disturbed at all and could develop in peace. For the Lampari Kingdom, this was also very beneficial. If there was no worry about the Black Rice Wasteland, the Lampari Kingdom could focus more on the north of the kingdom. So although 70 rented the Western Army to Su, he had received a lot of criticism and opposition in the Lampari Kingdom. When Su proposed this method of cooperation, it was completely approved. Of course, Su wasn't willing to do this in his heart. This fortification to the people of the Signs could be considered unbreakable, but to Su, this so-called fortification didn't have much meaning, and it would be hard for it to block a truly powerful attack. New Flyer had invested a total of 3 million gold coins to build this fortification. If this money was used for other things, the returns would be much higher. But in order to obtain the approval of the Lampari Kingdom's army and create a stable environment for the Black Rice Wasteland, this 3 million gold coins had to be spent. However, for Su and New Flyer, the Black Rice Wasteland was only one of the places that needed a stable environment. The stability of another place was even more important. But this place wasn't stable. Chapter 618. With the support of New Flyer, Count Wine continued his fierce offensive against the lords of the southern principality of Constantine. In a few months, Count Wine not only completely defeated the alliance of the 4 lords who joined forces to resist him, but he also defeated 3 lords and took over a large territory of more than 10,000 square kilometers. The current Count Wine was already the strongest lord in the Stantine Duchy. There wasn't one of them. The Principality of Constantine in the north was in a state of war, and the south was not peaceful either. In the first few years, Anklo had been accumulating strength. Although he had been constantly expanding his territory and increasing his strength, attracting a lot of attention in the south of the Principality of Constantine. Compared to Lord Wine, he had been keeping a low profile. However, since entering the year 3785 of the continental calendar, Anklo had begun to develop in the south of the Principality of Constantine. In just the first half of the year, Anklo had more than doubled the area of his territory. Now, the total area of his territory was more than 10,000 square kilometers. Although he was not the lord with the largest territory in the south of the Principality of Constantine, in terms of strength, especially on the battlefield, no one dared to doubt that he was the most powerful one. The reason was simple, because he had the full support of New Flyer. After signing the agreement with Lord Wine, New Flyer cut off the supply of military magic machines to all the lords in the Principality of Constantine, except for Lord Wine and Anklo. Without the supply of ammunition and maintenance, the military magic machines naturally could not be used for long. In the beginning, the other lords could still compete with Lord Wine and Anklo with their inventory. However, after a while, the military magic machines in their hands could not be used. The other lords were defeated under the attack of Lord Wine and Anklo. They had no ability to resist at all. Everyone knew very well that the key to the victory of the war between the lords in the Principality of Constantine was the New Flyer. To put it bluntly, New Flyer could even completely control the development of the situation in the Principality of Constantine. After realizing this, many people naturally couldn't sit still no matter what. Hashtag. There were many differences between Signs and Earth, but there were also some similarities. Summer Autumn Cicada was one of them. Every summer, Sue-Yi would always feel a sense of intimacy when he heard the familiar chirping of cicadas. It had been 8 years since Sue-Yi came to this world. Although he had already adapted to life in this world, got married, had children, and started a family, Sue-Yi still often missed everything on Earth. Listening to the chirping of the cicadas, he seemed to have returned to his childhood on Earth. Every summer, he and his friends would hold a self-made net and chase butterflies and cicadas all over the mountains. This year's summer was still hot. Sue-Yi took a break from his busy schedule and sat under the shade of a tree in the backyard of the manor. Listening to the chirping of the cicadas above his head, he thought of his time on Earth. Suddenly, his childishness was aroused. He asked Linda to find a fine net and a piece of iron wire. Then, he broke off a branch of the right thickness from the tree and skillfully made a net. "Hey, Freya, Daddy will take you to catch butterflies and cicadas, okay?" Sue-Yi asked Freya, who had been watching him make the net, with a smile. Freya was already over 2 years old. Although she was still at an age where she could not understand anything, she could already run, jump, and speak very fluently. When she heard Sue-Yi's question, she looked up at the net in Sue-Yi's hand and asked in a childish voice, "Daddy, why do we have to catch butterflies and cicadas?" Sue-Yi smiled and squatted down. He pinched Freya's chubby little face and asked, "Freya, do you think butterflies are beautiful?" "Well, butterflies are the most beautiful." "Well, do you want to get closer and see why butterflies are so beautiful?" Sue-Yi asked again. "Yes, Daddy, can you call the butterflies over and let me take a good look at them?" "Of course I can. Come, follow Daddy. I will take you to chat with the butterflies." If it was in a normal climate, now that it was mid-August, there would be no trace of butterflies. However, because the Principality of Constantine was located in the southern part of the continent, the climate was always hot. In addition, Sue-Yi's private territory was close to the sea and the air was humid. At this time, there were still countless butterflies fluttering in the air. Sue-Yi led the excited Freya into the woods next to the manor. At a glance, they could see several kinds of colorful butterflies shuttling back and forth in the woods. Freya cheered and rushed over, but the butterflies were so frightened that they flew everywhere in the air. Sue-Yi stretched the net into the air and easily caught several butterflies. Sue-Yi carefully picked a butterfly and put it in Freya's palm. The magic in his body flowed and formed a small cyclone near Freya's palm, just enough to press the butterfly in Freya's palm so that it could not fly away. Freya was pleasantly surprised. She carefully held the butterfly with both hands and looked around for a while. Suddenly, she looked up at Sue-Yi and asked, "Daddy, why doesn't it fly?" Sue-Yi was a little confused. "Don't you want to chat with the butterfly? It's in your hand now. Wouldn't it be good if you played with it for a while?" Freya shook her head. "But I just like the way it flew. It wouldn't look good if it stopped like this." Then she looked at the net in Sue-Yi's hand and pointed at the butterflies stuck on it. "Daddy, put them down too. They are so pitiful." Sue-Yi looked at Freya in surprise and couldn't help but laugh. Although Freya was only 2 years old, she was a kind-hearted little girl, and this was exactly what he valued most. Sue-Yi picked the butterflies one by one according to Freya's instructions and let them all fly again. Looking at the groups of butterflies fluttering in the woods, Freya laughed happily again. She ran back and forth in the woods with small steps, as if she was full of vitality. Seeing Freya's happy appearance, Sue-Yi also felt his entire body become happy. Because of the various problems in the Black Rice Wasteland and the Principality of Constantine, he had been extremely busy. Now that he could play with Freya for a while, it was simply the best way to relax. When he was about to bring Freya deeper into the forest, Liz, who had been guarding the forest and giving Sue-Yi and Freya some space, suddenly rushed over. "Master, there is a guest." Seeing the nervous expression on Liz's face, Sue-Yi felt a bit strange. "What guest?" "It was brought over by Sir CEO. He said that Duke Stantine sent an envoy." "Duke Stantine sent it?" Sue-Yi was stunned, but then he smiled. "That's right, this Duke can't hold it in anymore." After handing Freya over to Liz, Sue-Yi went to the front yard and saw Kennard and the envoy sent by Duke Stantine in the living room. The three envoys were all acquaintances of Sui. They were the three ministers under Duke Stantine that Sui had come into contact with after coming to the Principality of Constantine for the first time. The Frestac Chamber of Commerce had invested at least 2 million gold coins in them over the years, feeding them until their stomachs were filled with fat. When they saw Sui, naturally they were very polite. After both sides greeted each other with smiles, Sui asked them about their purpose for coming here. The three of them looked at each other, and a fat minister replied with a smile. "Chairman Suno, Viscount Sui, we came this time to report some good news to you." "Good news?" Sui nodded. "What's the good news?" The fat minister laughed and said, "Viscount Sui, in view of you and the new flyer's contributions to the Principality of Constantine that can't be ignored, the Duke has decided to raise your title from Viscount to Count. That is to say, from today onwards, we will be calling you Count Sui." On the side, Kennard had a look of pleasant surprise. He came from a noble family and placed great importance on his status as a noble. He had always been vexed that Sui's title wasn't high because he also had the status of a baron in the Lampari kingdom. If Sui didn't have a title, it would be equivalent to him being a baron of the Lampari kingdom under a commoner. Even if no one treated Sui as a normal citizen with a difference in status, there would be a bit of a grudge in his heart. Now that Sui had been promoted to a count, even if the status of a count was given to him by Duke Stantine, compared to a count of the Lampari kingdom, Sui only needed a suitable status as a noble, and that was enough. Sui had a calm expression as he smiled and nodded in understanding. The three messengers looked at each other before the fat minister took out a blueprint and opened it in front of Sui. "Sui." "No, Viscount Sui." "Oh, no. Count Sui. Since your title has been promoted, then according to the rules, your territory should be expanded accordingly. After some research, the Duke has finally decided to confer this land as your territory. Are you satisfied?" Sui's eyes followed the fat minister's finger across the low-precision map of the Principality of Constantine. After looking at the new territory the Principality of Constantine gave him, he gave a cold laugh in his heart. The territory Duke Stantine gave Sui extended from his previous territory of less than 24 square kilometers. At first glance, it seemed to have expanded by several times. But if one looked carefully, they would find that this new territory belonged to Count Wine. If Sui accepted this territory, it would be equivalent to stealing it from Count Wine. Duke Stantine was clearly doing this on purpose. This was without a doubt to destroy the cooperation between the Frestac Chamber of Commerce and Count Wine. It was clear that Duke Stantine was already afraid of Count Wine's strength. Destroying the cooperation between the Frestac Chamber of Commerce and Count Wine was to defeat Count Wine from the foundation. This was a very low-level trap. Not to mention Sui. Even Kennard on the side saw through it with a cold smile. With his understanding of Sui definitely wouldn't fall for such a low-level trap. However, after Sui was silent for a bit, he said with a smile, "Thanks for the Duke's gift. I'll take this territory." Kennard had a look of surprise, but the three messengers had smiles on their faces. Sui also had a smile on his face as he looked at the three of them, as if he didn't know the danger. Chapter 619. Strictly speaking, without Duke Stantine's approval, all the territories controlled by the lords in the Principality of Constantine were illegal. So according to this standard, over 80% of Count Wine's territories were illegal. At first, Count Wine was just a small lord, but now his territories were taken from other lords. This was a tacit rule in the Principality of Constantine. Whoever had the bigger fist would take it, and no one would question it. But now, Duke Stantine suddenly announced that he would give a portion of Wine's territory to Sui. In terms of law, this wasn't a problem because Duke Stantine wanted to give all the territories in the Principality of Constantine. But in reality, this was no different from slapping Count Wine's face. In giving this large territory to Sui, he was clearly sowing discord between Sui and Count Wine. The key problem was that territory was very important to any noble in the signs. It could even be said that the size of the territory represented everything to the noble. Duke Stantine's actions were clearly a plot. He was clearly throwing out bait for Sue, E, and Count Wine to fight for it. If Sue, E, and Count Wine really fell out because of this territory, it would naturally be what Duke Stantine wanted. Count Wine became so powerful because of the support of the new flyer. If he fell out with the new flyer and lost the support of the new flyer, it was equal to giving Count Wine a fatal blow. Like this, Count Wine, who was a threat to Duke Stantine and the Principality of Constantine, wasn't a threat at all. Even if Sue, E, and Count Wine wouldn't fall out because of this territory, the ownership of this territory would be a deep thorn between them that would affect their relationship. It had to be said that Duke Stantine's move was very smart. He used his status as Duke Stantine to easily resolve most of the threat from Count Wine. What was even more extreme was that he had announced Sue Yi's new territory to the Principality of Constantine, letting all the lords in the Principality know about this matter. So all the lords in the Principality of Constantine stretched out their necks and waited. The combination of New Flyer and Count Wine was too terrifying. If their relationship wasn't destroyed, the other lords in the Principality couldn't see any hope. However, Sue E and Count Wine's reaction to this matter was out of everyone's expectations. First, Sue E straightforwardly accepted Duke Stantine's offer, clearly indicating that he would accept this territory. Then the most surprising thing was that Count Wine didn't express any opinions on this matter. After Sue E expressed his willingness to accept this territory, Count Wine immediately withdrew all his subordinates from this territory. It wasn't just the army, even the administrative staff he used to control this territory were withdrawn, clearly showing that he was giving up control of this territory. After that, the Frestac Chamber of Commerce's guards entered the territory. Following this, the Omrit Chamber of Commerce's construction team also entered the territory. They began to build factories with the Frestac Chamber of Commerce's logo, as well as workers' residences, which meant that the Frestac Chamber of Commerce had officially taken over this territory. During this entire process, New Flyer and Count Wine didn't have any conflict. Rather, when a New Flyer's guards and Count Wine's army came into contact, both sides were very friendly and didn't seem to be nervous at all. This made everyone's jaws drop. Count Wine could be considered invincible in the northern part of the duchy. Everyone thought that with his momentum, he wouldn't allow his territory to be taken away. But facing New Flyer, he didn't resist at all and didn't even raise any objections. Could it be he was that afraid of New Flyer? No one knew what Count Wine was thinking, but everyone knew what Count Wine did. Perhaps it was because he felt that his territory had decreased, but after this matter, Count Wine immediately launched an attack on two neighboring lords. In just a month's time, he completely defeated these two lords and took their territory. The territory of these two lords added together was much larger than the territory Duke Stantine had given Sue E. Therefore, Count Wine's territory had increased by quite a bit. Half a month later, Duke Stantine used the same trick and gave Count Wine's territory to Sue E. This time, this territory was far from Sue E's territory, and there was a large piece of Wine's territory in between. However, Count Wine didn't raise any objections this time. He withdrew all of his subordinates from that territory, and even withdrew all of his subordinates from the territory in between. He took the initiative to give up the territory separating Sue Yi's two territories, allowing Sue Yi's territory to be connected. Like this, Sue Yi's territory had already surpassed a shocking 2,000 square kilometers. Count Wine, whose territory had been reduced once again targeted other overlords. This time, his attacks were even more ferocious. In less than a month, he defeated another 3 overlords and finally expanded his territory by quite a bit. After these 2 times, Count Wine's territory was now close to 20,000 square kilometers. It was even close to Duke Stantine's territory. Moreover, Count Wine's army had increased because of his continuous battles with other lords. He had over 50,000 troops and was only 10,000 less than the 60,000 that Duke Stantine had announced. In terms of actual battle strength, Count Wine's 50,000 subordinates had experienced many fierce battles. More importantly, they were equipped with the military magic machines provided by New Flyer, so their battle strength was undoubtedly much higher than Duke Stantine's. This had already been proven countless times in the battles between Count Wine and the other lords. With this comparison, more and more people in the Principality of Constantine believed that Count Wine would replace Duke Stantine and become the new duke. In this duchy, the only one who could stop Count Wine was Viscount Anclo in the south, right? However, when they thought about how Count Wine and Viscount Anclo were so strong, it was because they had received the support of New Flyer. Once the other lords lost the military magic machines provided by New Flyer, they didn't have the ability to compete with these two lords. Inferring from this, the one who decided the fate of the Principality of Constantine wasn't these two lords, but rather the New Flyer. Or rather, it was Sue. Hashtag at the end of summer, the seaside of the Principality of Constantine was still hot. Even though the sky was completely dark, the beach was still bustling with people coming and going. Today was New Flyer's weekly rest day. After the employees of New Flyer got off work, they didn't even eat as they changed into swimwear and headed to the beach. This public beach had been greatly developed by Sue, and now it had become a very suitable place to relax in the summer. There was a row of houses built on the beach that became various shops. They would be brightly lit at night, and there would be barbecue and wine. When night fell, the giant magic lamps around the beach would shine with incomparably bright light, lighting up the entire beach. People would gather in groups of 2s and 3s, laughing loudly as they dyed the beach into a city that didn't sleep. Sue and Steele were strolling on the private beach, looking at the bright lights and people in the distance. Steele couldn't help saying in an emotional voice, "I remember when we came here a year ago, this beach was still desolate and there wasn't a single person at night. But now it's this lively, it can even compare to the nights in Anvilmar City." Sue revealed a smile. "What? Do you miss Anvilmar City? Isn't the New Moon Troupe going to Anvilmar City to perform in a few days? If you want to go, you can go with them." Steele shook her head. "No, I'm just feeling emotional. Actually, from what I can see, Anvilmar City is already very backward. There are many places where it isn't convenient compared to Banda City. Not mentioning anything else, up until now, Anvilmar City still hasn't built a complete public transport system. Whenever I go to Anvilmar City, it's very inconvenient. This is something that can't be helped. A city's public transport system is a social welfare system. It can't be used to make money. To build a complete city's public transport system, one has to invest a large amount of money. Although the Lampari Kingdom's finances have greatly improved, they don't have the spare funds to invest in this right now," Sue said with a sigh. Steele looked at Sue. "You understand Her Majesty's difficulties quite well." Sue looked at Steele and revealed a smile before tapping her nose. "What? Are you jealous?" Steele gave a soft snort. "I wasn't jealous when you hugged her so tightly last time. Why would I be jealous now?" Sue broke out in laughter. When he carried 70 down the cliff last time, he had fallen into the eyes of Steele and the others who were waiting at the bottom of the cliff. Steele didn't say anything, but she clearly minded it very much. "All right, it's impossible for anything to happen between me and 70. You should be clear on this." Sue held Steele's waist as he spoke in a soft voice. "Then why did she do this?" Steele rolled her eyes at Sue. "Don't think that I can't see that Her Majesty is interested in you. Although she hides it very well, I'm also a woman and I can see what she's thinking." Sue knit his brows. "You're thinking too much, right? With her personality, if she was really interested in me, she wouldn't do that in front of you. Last time, maybe she was just putting on an act for the sake of negotiating with me." "No, you don't understand." Steele shook her head. "If a woman doesn't approve of a man in her heart, she definitely wouldn't do something this intimate. Could it be that you think Her Majesty is a frivolous person? Of course she isn't a frivolous person, but in the end, it's impossible for the two of us to be together. She is the queen of the Lampari Kingdom, and I already have you as my wife. so it's impossible for us to be together no matter what. He shook his head. Steele, just treat this as her being willful. All right? Steele gave a shrug. I don't care. If my husband can even move the heart of a queen, doesn't that mean that my eyes are outstanding? But do you really not care about this? Don't forget, recently, there have been many articles about the successor to the throne in the Lampari Kingdom's newspapers. Successor to the throne? Suyi's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 620. Since Seveni's coronation, the successor to the Lampari Kingdom's throne had always been a large problem that had troubled countless people in the Lampari Kingdom. Lampuri XIII and King Eric had died, and Seveni had taken the throne. In the Lampari Kingdom's royal family, only Seveni's second brother, His Highness Mayam, and Eric's only son, His Highness Prince William, had the right to the throne. Although His Highness Mayam was married, he didn't have an heir yet, and Her Majesty Seveni hadn't married yet. This meant that if something happened to Her Majesty Seveni, the only ones qualified to take the throne in the Lampari Kingdom were His Highness Prince William and His Highness Prince Mayam. But His Highness Prince William was King Eric's son, and the Eric Kingdom had poisoned Lampuri XIII, as well as starting a civil war with Her Majesty Seveni. So, as the son of King Eric, His Highness Prince William was naturally excluded as a successor to the throne, and His Highness Prince Mayam had always been known as a coward in the kingdom. Whether it was Lampuri XIII being poisoned, King Eric's sudden death, or Queen Seveni's coronation, this prince had never expressed any opinions. He had always hidden in his fief and lived a life cut off from the world, not contacting the outside world at all. This kind of person naturally couldn't inherit the throne. So looking at it like this, there wasn't a single suitable successor to the throne in the Lampari Kingdom. In the beginning, no one cared about this matter. But when the Lampari Kingdom's internal situation gradually stabilized and the kingdom began to prosper under Her Highness Seveni's leadership, the country's strength increased day by day. While the people of the Lampari Kingdom were grateful to Her Highness Seveni's wise leadership, they also began to care about her successor. The various newspapers of the Lampari Kingdom discussed this matter and finally came to a conclusion. The best way to solve this problem was for Her Majesty Seveni to get married. As long as it was Her Majesty Seveni's child, of course he would be the most suitable successor to the throne. After coming to this conclusion, there were many people in the Lampari Kingdom who were stirred by this matter. Her Majesty Seveni was the queen of the Lampari Kingdom. There was no need to mention her status. Moreover, although Her Majesty Seveni wasn't considered beautiful, she was still a first-class beauty. Moreover, she had a gentle personality and a kind smile. Even without her identity as a queen, from a girl's point of view, she was very outstanding. This noble, beautiful, gentle, and principled young queen who wasn't even 24 years old, she still hadn't married yet and didn't even have a fixed partner. Not to mention the Lampari Kingdom. Even in the signs, this was an anomaly. Moreover, Her Majesty Seveni's reputation had always been good. There had never been any rumors related to her. This didn't seem wrong. Before Lampuri XIII died, Her Highness Seveni often came into contact with Sui, so there were many rumors about her and Sui. But these rumors gradually disappeared with the changes in the Lampari Kingdom, and the more important thing was that Sui got married and had a child. After all, no matter what, whether it was Her Highness Seveni or Her Majesty Seveni, it was impossible for her to marry someone who already had a wife. Although in the minds of most people in the Lampari Kingdom, New Flyer and Sui had always had good reputations, there was no chance for them in this matter. But putting aside Sui, Her Majesty Seveni still hadn't shown any signs of being close to any man. This made many people in the Lampari Kingdom worried. If Her Majesty didn't get married, the problem of the successor to the Lampari Kingdom's throne would be a large hidden danger. So not only were there many people in the Lampari Kingdom concerned about Her Majesty Seveni's marriage, there were many nobles and ministers who used private or public channels to advise Her Majesty Seveni, hoping that she would seriously consider getting married. When Seveny came to the Principality of Constantine last time, she had complained to Sue E in private. She said that the reason she came to the Principality of Constantine was because she was annoyed by those people. I don't know what they are thinking. It seems like they all want me to get married. Well, they want me to get married as soon as possible and give birth to children as soon as possible. What do they think I am? A machine to give birth to children? Thinking of the aggrieved look on Seveny's face when she complained to him last time, Sue E couldn't help smiling. Turning to look at Steele, Sue E said with a smile, "What? Even if Seveny needs a royal husband, it can't be given to a married man like me. What are you worried about?" Steele said with a soft snort, "That's not certain. If there is a need, I'm certain that she can do anything." Sue E couldn't help rolling his eyes. "Instead of worrying about this, why don't you worry about the elves? Elder Lysania gave me an ultimatum last time. If I can't pick an elven partner by the end of the year, she will consider using forceful methods." Forceful methods? Steele looked at Sue E with a funny gaze. How forceful? Could it be that you want those elven beauties to rape you? Sue E gave a shrug. That's not certain. Given Elder Lysania's personality, she is capable of doing anything. Steele pursed her lips into a smile. Isn't this a good thing for you? You must be looking forward to it, right? Sue E rolled his eyes at her. If I was really looking forward to it, why would I wait for Elder Lysania to give me an ultimatum? Perhaps you like being forcefully treated by others, Steele said with a chuckle. Sue E was instantly filled with rage. He pulled Steele over and slapped her high and bouncy, but I think you're the one who likes being forcefully treated by others. Do you believe that I won't rape you right here if you keep talking? Steele looked at Sue E with a flirtatious gaze. Come, I'll warmly welcome you. There was an evil flame that filled Sue Yi's heart. He picked up Steele and released his magic, preparing to fly back to the manor on the cliff with Steele. But who would have thought that as soon as they moved, their expressions would change? Sue Yi's body was on the way up, but all of a sudden, the magic in his body burst out violently, quickly setting up a blue magic shield outside his body. In the nearby sea, a huge current suddenly burst out, like a tornado, rushing directly toward the two. The tornado hit the magic shield, making a muffled sound. Sue Yi's body, which had already risen into the air, was immediately sent flying by the huge impact. If Sue Yi hadn't immediately released all of his magic and used flying magic to slow down the momentum, he would have definitely hit the cliff by the sea. Sue Yi barely stabilized his body and looked down at Steele in his arms. Although she was shocked, she obviously didn't suffer any injuries. Only then did he feel relieved. He turned his head and looked around, but didn't see even a ghost. What surprised him even more was that he didn't even sense any fluctuation of magic elements. The reason why the attack was so sudden was that he and Steele only sensed the fluctuation of magic elements when a waterspout was launched. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in such a difficult situation. But where was the enemy? Just as the question arose in his heart, two more torrents suddenly rose from the sea and attacked Sue E and Steele with incomparable ferocity. Sue E let go of Steele and let her float in the air. He raised his hands, and another magic shield fell down. At the same time, a water dragon went up to meet the attack. The two water dragons collided fiercely. Sue Yi's body swayed, and he only felt that the magic in his body was about to be shaken off. He couldn't help but be shocked. This enemy was clearly not in the field of vision, but he was controlling the water dragons to attack from a distance, and it still had such terrifying power. From this, it could be seen that the enemy's magic power must be far beyond Sue Yi's. He should be at least a powerful magician of the supreme magician level. Thinking of this, Sue Yi was shocked and angry. He looked around and shouted into the darkness. As a supreme magician, you actually have to hide your head and show your tail. This is a disgrace to all magicians. As soon as his voice fell, a burst of laughter suddenly sounded in the darkness. Then, in a void not far in front of Sue Yi, the space seemed to be torn apart, and a dark and bottomless crack suddenly appeared. The laughter came from this crack, and then a black shadow appeared. When it comes to the disgrace of magicians, Chairman Su, you insist that you are a businessman and even think that the identity of a businessman is much more important than that of a magician. You are more worthy than me, aren't you? Su, he held Steele's hand, stretched out a finger, and scratched the palm of her hand. Then he stared at the figure that appeared from the crack in space. It was obvious that he was at least a senior magician, and said in a low voice, "At least I have never done despicable things like sneak attacks. You're already a supreme magician, but you still do this. Don't you feel ashamed?" Ashamed? The man laughed dryly. "I, Azura, always do things according to what I like. Why would I feel such meaningless shame? The reason why I hid just now was because I wanted to tease you and this little girl. From your performance just now, your magic power is really good. No wonder people call you the most talented magician of the Lampari Kingdom's younger generation. It's a pity that you wasted your time and energy on business. If you put all your effort into magic research, I'm afraid that you would surpass me in less than 10 years. Thank you for your praise, but many people have said this to me many times. I don't need you to repeat it." Su, he said coldly. "Oh, is that so? I really don't like to talk nonsense with people, especially with a dead person." The man's voice gradually turned cold. "Now, obediently accept your death." Seeing the man's hand light up with a magic light, Su Yi took a deep breath. The opponent's magic power was far superior to his and Steele's. This should be the most difficult battle he had ever fought since he transmigrated to this world. But seeing the magic communicator flickering in Steele's pocket, Su Yi felt relieved. Chapter 621. A giant fireball brushed past Su Yi's body and slammed into the cliff. With a giant explosion sound, it created a shockingly deep hole in the cliff. Su Yi and Steele were sent flying in different directions, both of them panting a bit. They had only fought with this great magician for less than 3 minutes, but the two of them had already used all their skills and had been in danger several times. There was no other way. There was a difference in grade between a great magician and a great magician, so their strength couldn't be compared at all. Even if Su Yi was only a step away from becoming a great magician, before he broke through that boundary, he couldn't fight back against a great magician at all. But the two of them couldn't just sit there and wait for death. With great magician Camilla's teachings, the two of them had a clear understanding of a great magician's control over magic. It was because of this understanding that they could last this long under the fierce attacks of this great magician. Seeing the two of them dodge left and right under his attacks, occasionally using defensive spells to block some of the damage, preventing themselves from being seriously injured, the great magician suddenly broke out in laughter. "I say, you two should give up as soon as possible. Don't think that someone will come to save you just because you're dragging it out like this. I've already set up a space isolation array around this area. Any sound or image from here won't be able to escape this space. No one will know that something happened to you." Su Yi gave a cold snort. Actually, when he was dodging the great magician's attacks, he had already noticed the existence of this spatial isolation array. This great magician was right. In this space isolated by the spatial isolation array, no sound or image could escape. This was something that had been verified when Elder Lysania and Su Yi were discussing matters. If it was during the day, the strange phenomenon in this space would easily attract the attention of others. But it was late at night, and this was Su Yi's private beach, so there was no one here. Adding in the darkness, no one would notice anything strange here. Of course, Su Yi had already expected this and immediately thought of a countermeasure. What they needed to do now was stall for time as much as possible. Thinking of this, Su Yi stopped and raised his right hand. The great mage stared blankly for a moment before smiling and saying, "What? Have you finally decided to give up?" Su Yi sighed and nodded. "We might not be able to escape today, but we're going to die anyway. Can't you let us die with some understanding? We've never seen you before. We don't know what we've done to offend you that you wouldn't hesitate to sneak into this place to assassinate us." The great magician let out an unpleasant cackle. "You didn't offend me, but you—" "No, Chairman Su, You've offended too many people. All right, since you're about to die, I'll tell you. I came to kill you because I was invited by Duke Stantine. As for what exactly happened, you can slowly think about it when you get to hell. As soon as he finished speaking, the great magician waved his hand again, and countless dark red fireballs flew towards Sue, E, and Steele. Sue, E, and Steele looked at each other and nodded. They put down their hands and looked like they had given up on resisting. Seeing the reaction of the two, the great magician laughed again. Duke Stantine had offered a high price of 500,000 gold coins to get rid of Sue, E. He thought it would be very difficult, but he didn't expect it to be so easy. Boom, 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 boom. A series of fireballs hit Sue, E, and Steele, causing a series of intense explosions. The great magician chuckled, thinking that these two fellows had actually given up on resisting. Now that they were hit by the fireballs, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. It was a pity that the little girl called Steele was so beautiful, but now she had turned into a pile of meat. It was simply a waste. But after a while, his expression changed. There was something wrong with the sound of the fireballs hitting them. If they had really hit their bodies, they would have already turned into two piles of meat. How could there be such intense explosions? When the flames dissipated, the great magician looked over and found that there was a light blue barrier around Sue, E, and Steele, completely covering them. When the fireballs hit them, they didn't cause any damage to them. The great magician looked at the light blue barrier, and his expression changed. He gave a cold snort. Humph! Great magician Camilla really is willing to give you such precious defensive magic items, and he actually gave you two of them. Sue, E, and Steele looked at each other with smiles. Great magician Camilla was known for his poverty. How could he give them such precious defensive magic items? Actually, the defensive magic items they were using were not given to them by great magician Camilla, but rather the gift Elder Lucia had given them during their wedding. It said that this azure guard was a treasure passed down in the Night Song tribe for several thousand years, and its defensive magic was very outstanding. Looking at it now, Elder Lucia's words were not false. The great magician looked over Sue, E, and Steele before saying with a cold smile, "Very good. Since you have this kind of treasure on you, then after I kill you, I'll be able to obtain a few good things. Let me tell you, even if you have this thing, you can't escape. I urge you to obediently accept your death. That way, perhaps I'll leave you with a complete." Before he could finish speaking, the great mage suddenly felt something strange. He raised his head and saw an extremely thick pillar of fire rapidly falling from the top of his head. Ragnarok's judgment. The great magician instantly revealed a shocked expression. This was a fire-forbidden spell. It had happened too suddenly, and he had no time to dodge. He could only gather all the magic in his body and create a defensive magic barrier above his head. It was just like the judgment scenes that Sue E had seen in countless movies on Earth. The giant pillar of flames fell from the sky and completely surrounded the great magician. The pillar of flames lit up the surrounding area, but it also made the great magician's shadow very clear. Looking from the side, the great magician was bathed in the pillar of flames, like he was being judged by a god. The pillar of flames only lasted for a few seconds before fading away. It had to be said, the great magician's strength was very outstanding. Even after being suddenly attacked by a fire-forbidden spell, he actually didn't die. Even his clothes weren't damaged at all, other than his face being much more haggard and no longer having the arrogance from before. He was completely unharmed. The great magician paused before raising his head. Looking into the sky, he angrily shouted, "Which great magician is it? You're actually so shameless as to use a forbidden spell to attack. You're challenging the iron rules of us magicians." Humph! With a heavy cold snort, great magician Camilla slowly fell down from the sky, stopping between Sue E, Steele, and that person. He looked at the great magician with a cold face and said, "Runa, you actually dared to assassinate my granddaughter and grandson-in-law. What iron rules of magicians do I have to talk to you about? Do you have the face to say this?" Great magician Camilla. The great magician's expression changed. "You recognize me? Nonsense. other than a scum among great magicians like you. What other great magician would do such a shameless and despicable assassination? You are already a disgrace among us great magicians. You actually dare to talk to me about the iron rules of magicians? The great magician called Runa carefully looked at great magician Camilla and suddenly revealed a look of shock. He pointed at great magician Camilla with a look of disbelief as he loudly said, You've already grasped the spatial laws? No wonder I didn't notice you breaking my spatial isolation array. Great magician Camilla's lips curled, and he revealed a cold smile. What? Are you afraid? Let me tell you, I haven't truly grasped the spatial laws yet, but it's more than enough to deal with you. So just obediently accept your death for me. Seeing that great magician Camilla was about to make a move, Runa's face turned ashen. The reason why he accepted Duke Stantine's request to assassinate Sue, E, and Steele was because Duke Stantine had publicly offered a shocking 500,000 gold coins. Secondly, he was confident that he could silently kill Sue, E, and Steele without being discovered. Even if something happened and he was discovered, he had absolute confidence that there wouldn't be any problems. The strongest magician in New Flyer was Great Magician Camilla. According to the reports, Great Magician Camilla was a 4th grade Great Magician. Although he was a level higher than him, the difference in strength wasn't that big. Even if he couldn't beat him, he could still easily escape. But he never would have thought that Great Magician Camilla's magic power would be much higher than what the report said. Not only did he surpass the level of a 4th grade Great Magician, he even surpassed the level of a 5th grade Great Magician and grasped the spatial laws. Even if Great Magician Camilla hadn't broken through and become an archmagus, he had grasped the spatial laws. That meant that his understanding of magic had far surpassed him. If Great Magician Camilla hadn't grasped the spatial laws, he could have easily escaped, but now that Great Magician Camilla had grasped the spatial laws, as long as Great Magician Camilla didn't want him to escape, it would be very hard for him to escape with his spatial magic. Not to mention that Great Magician Camilla had used Ragnaros's trial without any warning. So he had taken the full damage of this forbidden spell. Even if he had used his own strength to block this forbidden spell, he had consumed most of his magic power. Even if he wanted to resist, he couldn't do anything. Thinking of this, Runa's face turned ashen and his heart was filled with endless regret. If he knew that Great Magician Camilla's magic power had increased this quickly, he wouldn't have tried to assassinate Sue, E just for the 500,000 gold coins. Seeing the glow of magic condensed in Great Magician Camilla's hands, Runa gave a long sigh in his heart. He lowered his hands and prepared to wait for death. Sue, E suddenly shouted, "Wait!" Great Magician Camilla turned to look at Sue, E with a frown. "What are you doing?" Sue, E flew over and pressed down on Great Magician Camilla's hand. He said with a faint smile, "Grandfather, isn't this a good chance to test it out? When I fought you before, those fellows said that it wasn't fun enough. Now that there's a live target in front of them that they can attack, they will definitely be very happy." Seeing the smile on Sue Yi's face, Great Magician Camilla immediately understood what Sui meant. He turned to look at Runa and nodded, "Not bad. This is indeed a good target." Chapter 622. Runa saw Sue, E, and Great Magician Camilla looking at him with malicious gazes, and he felt a chill fill his heart. However, the current situation was not good for him. He couldn't fight or escape. He could only be manipulated by them. If Great Magician Camilla wanted to kill him, he wouldn't have a chance at all. Rather, if the other side wanted to do something, perhaps he could find a chance to live. Thinking of this, although Runa's face was ashen like his heart was dead, his mind was already working and he was prepared to grab any chance. However, Great Magician Camilla was watching him the entire time, so he didn't have a chance to gather his magic to use space magic to escape. Runa could only patiently wait. What made him feel strange was that the little girl named Steele was holding an iron box in her hand. She seemed to be muttering something to the iron box. Runa could feel a trace of magic fluctuations coming from the small iron box. Based on the situation, it should be some new magic machine made by New Flyer. But what use did this small iron box have? After around 10 minutes, a set of orderly footsteps came from a cliff. Based on the sound, it seemed like several hundred people had come at once. Runa was not surprised. Rather, he was happy. In this situation, the more people there were, the more chaotic it would be. The more chaotic it was, the more chance he had to escape. The orderly footsteps turned a corner on the cliff and came down from the side of the hill. After a while, where the beach connected to the hill, a group of orderly dressed soldiers appeared. Runa glanced over and was shocked. There were around 400 or 500 soldiers, and not only were there traces of magic fluctuations coming from their armor, which should be enchanted with magic arrays, even the strange things they were carrying were also releasing magic fluctuations. It was clear that they were all magic machines. Although he already knew that New Flyer had many different military magic machines, seeing such a complete set of military magic machines, Runa was a bit dazzled. Great magician Runa, right? He suddenly spoke to Runa. Runa knit his brows and gave a soft snort. What? Does Chairman Su have something to say? He revealed a faint smile. He pointed at the Frestec Chamber of Commerce guards in the distance and said, Great magician Runa, I believe that you already understand that you definitely can't escape from Grandfather's hands. However, I'll give you a chance to escape now. Although Suyi's tone was very impolite and made Runa feel very uncomfortable, in this situation, he had no choice. He looked at the New Flyer guard in the distance and raised a brow. What chance? As long as you can last for 10 minutes under the attacks of our company's guards, I'll have Grandfather let you go. What do you think? Runa was first filled with rage. He was a respected, great magician. What did Su-yi actually say? That he could last 10 minutes under the attacks of his company's guards? What a joke. These were normal soldiers. He could crush to death with a single finger. Su-yi raising this condition was simply the greatest humiliation to him. Then he was filled with joy. Su-yi actually dared to look down on him like this. This was his best chance. Runa did not reply to Su-yi and turned to Great Magician Camilla to ask, Great Magician Camilla, what do you say? Great Magician Camilla gave a shrug. Su-yi is in charge here. All right. Runa turned to look at Su. Chairman Su, will you keep your word? Su-yi said with a smile. Even if I don't keep my word, what can you do? You. Runa was filled with rage. He pointed at Su-yi and wanted to curse, but he found that he couldn't say anything. The situation was stronger than the person. In this situation, he could only let Su-yi do whatever he wanted. Thinking about it, Runa suppressed his anger and said in a deep voice, All right, Chairman Su, I hope you keep your word. Tell your Merchant Association guards to start attacking. Humph, not to mention 10 minutes, just these normal people. Even if I stood here and let them attack me for 10 hours, they wouldn't be able to touch me at all. Chairman Su, you're looking down on great magicians too much. Is that so? Su-yi revealed a smile. I've never looked down on Grandfather. Runa looked at the smiling great magician Camilla and suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. These guards of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, could it be that they really were strange? But turning to look at the soldiers in the distance, Runa calmed down. Even if these fellows were equipped with military magic machines, they were only a bit stronger than normal people. How could they be a threat to a great magician like him? All right, let them attack. Runa waved his hand and said, Great magician Runa, are you certain you're ready? Nonsense. Let them begin. All right. Su-yi took the magic communicator from Steel's hands. Captain Hart, begin the attack. After giving the order, Su-yi immediately pulled Steel and retreated with great magician Camilla. Runa looked at the three of them in confusion. He was thinking that if he was being attacked, why were they retreating so far away? Especially great magician Camilla. He was so far away. Wasn't he worried that he would use his space magic to escape? But after that, Runa found that he didn't have time to think about this problem at all. First, countless magic glowing arrows were shot out from the guards' formation. Like a storm, they flew at Runa. Runa gave a cold laugh. These magic arrows with a bit of low-level flame magic, they wanted to threaten a great magician like him? This was simply a joke. Runa's body didn't move at all. He just used his magic to create a magic barrier around him. The magic arrows that filled the sky hit the magic barrier, but they couldn't even create a single ripple on the barrier. These magic arrows only had a third-grade fire magic array attached to them, so of course they couldn't break the magic barrier of a great magician. Runa gave a cold laugh as he watched the new flyer guards keep shooting magic arrows. He then turned to look at Sue E in the distance with a cold laugh. "Chairman Sue, you wouldn't be so naive as to think that with this child's play, you would be able to make me surrender, right?" Sue E revealed a faint smile and didn't reply at all. Runa was filled with rage. He thought that this Sue E was actually looking down on him. If it wasn't for this situation, he would have raised his hand to exterminate the several hundred new flyer guards and teach Sue E a blood lesson. But after a while, Runa suddenly found that he was too naive. A single magic repeating crossbow naturally wasn't a threat to Runa, but the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards seemed endless as they kept shooting out magic arrows. Under the extremely high frequency of attacks, even though the magic barrier that Runa had set up didn't weaken at all, Runa could clearly feel that his magic was rapidly decreasing because of the magic arrows. Runa estimated in his heart, and then shockingly discovered that at this rate, his remaining magic wouldn't be able to last more than 10 minutes. At the thought of this, Runa could only suppress the shock in his heart. He raised his hand, and a few fireballs flew out, burning the large number of magic arrows that were coming at him to ashes. Compared to using a purely passive magic barrier to defend himself, this consumed much less magic. Sue E and the other two couldn't help but smile when they saw Runa's sudden action. "Grandpa, this great magician Runa is indeed much worse than you. When you practiced with the guard for the first time, you only took half a minute to notice the problem, but he only took 3 minutes to notice it now," Steele said with a smile. Great magician Camilla stroked his beard with a smile as he said with a nod, Like this fellow definitely won't be able to last the third wave of attacks. He definitely won't last more than 10 minutes. Suti didn't participate in the conversation between the grandfather and grandson. Rather, he was watching the battle without turning. Although the new flyer guards had sparred with great magician Camilla several times before, it was all just practice. Whether it was great magician Camilla or the new flyer guards, they had scruples and couldn't use their full strength. But when they attacked Runa this time, they didn't have any scruples at all. Naturally, they could see the true strength of the new flyer guards. Based on their current performance, the attack power of the guards was without a doubt much stronger than when they practiced with great magician Camilla. Runa was at least a third-grade great magician, but under the attacks of the guards, he couldn't hold on this quickly and was forced to take the initiative to counterattack. However, Runa had discovered the problem too late. When Runa began to use magic to counterattack, the attacks of the new flyer guards changed again. Half of the guards continued to use their magic repeating crossbows to attack Runa with a dense rain of magic arrows. The other half took out the magic bazookas on their backs and aimed them at Runa in the air. Seeing the magic light coming from the magic bazookas, Runa gave a cold snort. Although the power of this strange object was obviously much greater than the magic arrows, it was still not a threat to him. Runa used magic to negate some of the magic arrows and continued to maintain the magic shield, allowing the magic rockets from the individual magic rocket launchers to crash into him. The reason why Runa did this was to personally experience the might of the magic bazooka and then decide what to do next. However, when the first magic bazooka hit the magic barrier, Runa's heart was filled with regret. The rocket launcher didn't look very big, and the rockets it fired were also very small. However, when they collided with the magic barrier, they immediately exploded violently. The power of the explosion was actually comparable to a 6th tier or even 7th tier single target spell. Even with Runa's strength as a 3rd-grade great magician, 6th and 7th grade single target spells wouldn't be a threat to him. However, if he wanted to completely defend against this power, it would consume quite a bit of his magic power. Not to mention that there wasn't just one magic bazooka, there were over 200 of them. When more than half of the 200 rockets accurately hit Runa's magic barrier, countless bright sparks exploded around Runa's body. It was as if fireworks had been set off in midair. With the countless explosions, Rune found that a large portion of his magic power had been consumed, leaving him with less than a third. Rune's heart was filled with shock. When he was fighting with Sue, E, and Steel, he hadn't used much magic power at all. What he had used the most was to defend against great magician Camilla's fire forbidden spell, Ragnarok's Trial. Just to defend against this forbidden spell, he had used a third of his magic power. But this was a forbidden spell, so he could completely defend against it without using half of his magic power. This was already something to be proud of. However, after that, he had used more magic power to defend against the magic bazookas and the magic bazookas fired by the several hundred normal soldiers than he had to defend against Ragnarok's Trial. How was this possible? How could the attacks of the normal soldiers in less than 5 minutes compare to a forbidden spell? Chapter 6:23. However, this was just the beginning. Countless magic rockets hit Rune's magic barrier, and after countless bright fireworks exploded around him, a medium transport magic car arrived at the edge of the cliff. This transport magic car seemed to be carrying a lot of cargo, so it was very heavy and it made loud, rumbling sounds as it drove on the road. When the transport magic car arrived at the edge of the cliff, Rune looked over and found that there were 16 thick cylinders in the back of the magic car that looked like a beehive. If this thing was taken apart, each cylinder looked like the magic bazookas the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards were using, but it was clearly several times bigger. 16 of these stout cylinders were arranged in a 14x4 pattern to form a square, which was placed diagonally on a shelf. The transport magic car was at the edge of the cliff, and these black cylinders were facing Rune, who was floating above the beach. Rune looked at the magic car and the 16 black holes behind the cargo box, as a trace of unease appeared in his heart for the first time. In the depths of these cylinders, it was like an evil dragon could be released at any time. When Rune had this thought, there were 3 clear sounds that came from the new flyer guards below. Then the 16 magic rocket launchers in the back of the transport magic car lit up with incomparably bright magic light. Although there were 16 magic rockets that were fired from the 16 magic rocket launchers, because they were fired at the same time, there was a strong, muffled sound. Seeing the 16 magic rockets that were much stronger than the magic rockets used by the guards, Rune's expression became very ugly. He was certain that the power of these rockets was several times, or even dozens of times greater than the previous ones. If possible, the best way for him to deal with it was to immediately dodge. But first, he had promised Sue E that he would face the attacks of the new flyer guards. Second, these 16 magic rockets were very fast. As soon as they were fired, they were already in front of him, so he didn't have time to dodge at all. Not to mention that the range of these 16 magic rockets was very large. If he rushed to dodge, he might not be able to dodge them all. If he wasn't prepared and was hit by one, even if it was him, he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be injured. In an instant, Rune made the wisest decision. He stopped and gathered all his magic, pouring it all into the magic barrier. Hong, hong, hong. 3 magic rockets that were even thicker than Rune's head slammed into the magic barrier, immediately exploding with incomparably bright light. The violent explosion was accompanied by a shockwave that swept towards the sea. It actually caused a huge wave that was more than 2 meters high to appear in the calm sea at night. It was enough to show how powerful the 3 explosions were. Rune's body, which was suspended in mid-air, swayed violently. He felt something sweet in his throat, and a gush of blood rushed up to his throat. If it weren't for Rune's quick reaction and forcefully swallowing the blood back, he would have made a fool of himself in front of everyone. Although the power of the 3 magic rockets was all blocked by the magic barrier, Rune discovered that the explosive power of these 3 magic rockets was too great. Although he could withstand the power of the explosion, he couldn't completely offset the terrifying impact and shock of the explosion. As a result, his body couldn't withstand the aftershock and was injured. Rune checked his own magic and was even more shocked. After being hit by these 3 magic rockets, he only had less than 1/5 of the mana in his body left. In other words, the power of these 3 magic rockets was only slightly weaker than a forbidden spell like Ragnarok's judgment. Beautiful. Su-yi, who was watching the battle from afar, suddenly clapped his hands and praised, as expected of a great magician. You can actually last until now under such dense and powerful attacks. Great magician Runa, as long as you can withstand the next attack, I will fulfill my promise and let you go. Runa took a deep breath and calmed the surging blood in his chest. He looked at Su-yi with a complicated expression and said, "Come." Su-yi nodded and lowered his head to give a few instructions to the magic communicator in his hand. Runa patiently waited for a while, but found that the new flyer guards didn't continue attacking. He couldn't help but feel a little strange, and couldn't help but urge Su-yi. "Chairman Su, where's the last attack? Why isn't it here yet?" Su-yi smiled and asked in return, "Great magician Runa, do you want to die that much?" Runa was startled, and then he flew into a rage. Who would be willing to seek death? "Chairman Su, are you trying to humiliate me?" "No, I didn't mean that." Su-yi shook his head. "But great magician Runa, I think you should be clear on one fact. You don't have much magic left, and the power of this last attack will far surpass the previous 2 attacks. Are you sure you can block it?" Runa was silent for a while before he snorted and said, "Nonsense. This is your condition. I don't want to agree, but will you agree? Will great magician Camilla agree?" "That might not be the case," Su-yi said with a faint smile. "Actually, you still have another chance to avoid the fate of death." Runa narrowed his eyes as he looked at Su-yi and laughed. "Chairman Su, although I admit that I'm not a person with a backbone, I am still a great magician. If you want to use this method to humiliate me, then you're dreaming. I've said it before, I'm not trying to humiliate you. I just want to make a deal with you." Su-yi said with a shake of his head. "Great magician Runa, can I ask you something?" "You said that someone asked you to assassinate me. So how much did that person pay? Why are you interested in this?" Runa asked back. "I'm very curious about how much I'm worth." Su-yi shrugged. Runa curled his lips. 500,000 gold coins. "How about it? Isn't it worth a lot?" "Only 500,000 gold coins?" Su-yi's eyes opened wide in shock. "Isn't that too little? Am I that worthless?" Runa's eyes also opened wide as he looked at Su-yi with a look of disbelief. "Chairman Su, aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? 500,000 gold coins is a large sum, yet you think it's too little?" "Of course I think it's too little," Su-yi said without any politeness. "Let me tell you, our new flyer's monthly profit is over 1 million gold coins. As the chairman, I get over 5 million gold coins in dividends from the new flyer, but now you're telling me that I'm only worth 500,000 gold coins? You're looking down on me too much. 5 million gold coins a year." Runa looked at Su-yi in shock. "Are you joking? How is that possible? Even your Lampari Kingdom's annual revenue isn't that much, right? You alone earn more than the entire Lampuri Kingdom in a single year? That's not strange," Su-yi said with a laugh. "Actually, the Lampari Kingdom's finances are very poor in my opinion. Just in the Lampari Kingdom, there are many large nobles and merchants whose annual income far surpasses the kingdom's annual revenue. This is no secret. Great magician Runa, for you to be surprised by this, I can only say, you're too ignorant." Runa was filled with rage, but he found that at least in this aspect, Su-yi's criticism of him wasn't wrong. Thinking about it, Runa suppressed the anger in his heart and asked Su-yi in a muffled voice, "All right, you're saying all this nonsense to me. What do you want to say?" "I just want to ask you, compared to taking such a large risk to earn 500,000 gold coins, and it's hard to say if you'll actually get it, are you interested in earning at least 10,000 gold coins a year? Sometimes it can even reach 30 to 50,000 gold coins, and you can put it all into magic research. Moreover, you don't have to pay for the materials you need." Great magician Camilla and Steel beside Su-yi instantly understood Su-yi's meaning and knit their brows at the same time. "Su-yi, this fellow wants to assassinate you. How could you do this?" Great magician Camilla said in a deep voice. "That's right. Su-yi, he almost killed us just now. How could you let him work for us?" Su-yi waved his hand. This isn't anything. He was just bribed by someone else. Since someone else can bribe him, I should be able to do the same. Don't forget, I have plenty of money. Steele rolled her eyes at Sue E and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She knew that since Sue E had made his decision, he wouldn't easily change it. Great magician Camilla knit his brows to think, but he didn't say anything else. Seeing that the two of them didn't say anything else, Sue E raised his voice to ask Runa in the distance. How about it? Great magician Runa, are you interested in this kind of work? Runa thought for a bit before asking Sue E. Chairman Sue, you want to recruit me to work for you in New Flyer? Humph, you're too naive. No, this isn't naive. Sue E shook his head with a smile. You just said it. No one is willing to take the initiative to seek death. In this situation, if you don't agree to my conditions, there's only death for you. You try to kill me and steal, so there is no problem even if I kill you. I'm willing to give you a chance and let you make a choice. This is already very benevolent. All right, you can choose now. Do you want to die or work for me? Runa gave a bitter laugh. Do I have a choice? Chapter 6:24. A shocking piece of news quickly spread through the entire Principality of Constantine. Count Wine had officially declared war on Duke Stantine. Although according to the previous situation, everyone knew that Count Wine would have a day where he would fight Duke Stantine. But no one would have thought that this day would come so quickly. No matter how fast Count Wine's development was, he had just annexed a few small lords. Even if his strength had greatly increased, he hadn't stabilized the situation of his new territory, and he had been in constant battles, so he should rest for a while. How could he directly start a war with Duke Stantine, who was the strongest in the duchy? Not to mention that Duke Stantine had been the duke for over 30 years, so no one could predict how much power he had accumulated. Count Wine rashly chose to declare war on Duke Stantine. It really wasn't a wise decision. But just like when Count Wine started fighting with the other lords, when Count Wine and Duke Stantine started fighting, Duke Stantine's troops couldn't stop Count Wine's attacks at all. They kept retreating from the beginning. In just half a month, Count Wine's army had advanced 200 kilometers into Duke Stantine's territory, taking over a third of Duke Stantine's territory. The lords that were looking forward to a fierce battle between Count Wine and Duke Stantine, hoping that both sides would suffer heavy losses or that Duke Stantine would teach Count Wine a lesson. But after seeing this situation, they all fell silent. Very soon, there were calls for changing dukes in the Stantine Duchy. Seeing that they couldn't stop Count Wine's advance, the other lords began to support Count Wine as the new Duke Stantine. There were even some lords that praised Count Wine, saying that he could become the first duke in the history of the Principality of Constantine to unify the Principality of Constantine and turn it into a country. If Count Wine could complete this, he would become the greatest duke in the history of the Principality of Constantine. He would definitely write a beautiful chapter in the history of the Principality of Constantine. Suddenly, the situation in the Principality of Constantine changed. Duke Stantine had received the support of a bunch of lords before, but after Count Wine and Duke Stantine officially fought, the lords that supported Duke Stantine immediately changed sides. In the blink of an eye, Count Wine seemed to have become the best candidate for the new Grand Duke. However, Count Wine himself didn't feel any joy at all. Hashtag. Chairman Sue, this is the battle plan for the next period of time. Please take a look. Count Wine handed over the thick plan with both hands in a respectful manner. It was completely different from the arrogance he had in front of Sue Yi before. He even led an army to attack Sue Yi's territory in a fit of anger. Now Count Wine couldn't show any arrogance in front of Sue Yi. Instead, he was respectful to Sue Yi and didn't dare to show any arrogance. Sometimes, Count Wine felt angry and humiliated by his own attitude, but he couldn't do anything about it. Although to outsiders, especially to the other lords of the Principality of Constantine, he could be said to be awe-inspiring. Even if he fought with Duke Stantine, he could still defeat him. He was the most famous person in the Principality of Constantine. But he was very clear that all of this was based on the new flyer's support for him. If he lost the support of the new flyer, he would be no different from the other lords of the Principality of Constantine. If Sui was dissatisfied, Sui could immediately support another lord to replace him. And as long as he cut off the military magic machines, his army's battle strength would be reduced to 0. Everything he had right now would be for naught. Sometimes, Lord Wine wanted to give up all the military magic machines because he felt that with his territory, manpower, and resources, he could contend with any lord in the duchy. He wouldn't be at a disadvantage even if he faced Duke Stantine. But he was also clear that if he really lost the military magic machines, his soldiers who were used to using the military magic machines wouldn't be able to compare to the soldiers he had before. Using New Flyer's military magic machines was like drinking poison to quench one's thirst. If he didn't use them, he would be done for. But if he kept using them, he would also be done for. Count Wine was very helpless with this situation. He couldn't think of a way to solve it. So as time passed, he gave up on the idea of solving this problem. He had already made a decision in his heart. Since Sui wanted to use him as a chess piece, then he would strive to be a useful chess piece. Anyway, Sui was only interested in earning money. He wasn't that interested in becoming a lord and having the power to control the life and death of all the people in his territory. As long as he followed Sui's orders, he would definitely become the most powerful duke in the Principality of Constantine, even if he had to listen to Sui's arrangements. Sui took the battle plan and only glanced over it before putting it to the side. Count Wine, I don't care about the details of your battle plan. I only care about whether you can achieve the goal I want you to achieve. And in the process of achieving this goal, no matter what support you need from me and New Flyer, I will do my best. Looking at Sui's sincere gaze, Count Wine cursed in his heart. This Sui was simply the most hypocritical villain. He clearly controlled the entire Principality of Constantine, but he pushed him to the front to risk his life for him. He kept fighting with the other lords in the duchy while he hid in the back and did nothing. Even though he thought this, Count Wine's face still showed a smile and nodded. Yes. Chairman Sui, this is where we need to resupply. Please take a look. Sui took the supply statistics and looked at it seriously. After a while, he frowned. Count Wine, isn't the consumption of magic arrows a bit too high? In this half a month, you've fought with Duke Stantine 5 times, and you've used 100,000 magic arrows? But based on the results, Duke Stantine's side has lost less than 10,000 soldiers. Could it be that you need to use an average of 10 magic arrows to kill an enemy? Count Wine said in a deep voice. Chairman Sui, it's hard to determine the situation on the battlefield. Duke Stantine's soldiers have a tight defense, and it's hard for magic arrows to kill them. So the consumption is a bit higher. Is that so? Then do you have a way to solve this? Sui asked. I do. Since the other side has a way to defend against our normal military magic machines, then as long as Chairman Sui can provide me with higher-level military magic machines, I can easily defeat Duke Stantine. Count Wine said. Oh. Sui raised his head and looked at Count Wine with a smile that wasn't a smile. What kind of high-level military magic machines do you want? It doesn't need anything too high-level. I saw your New Flyer's magic rocket launchers last time, and they were very powerful. If my subordinates were equipped with these magic rocket launchers, I think Duke Stantine's army wouldn't be able to resist. Sui tapped the armrest of the chair and thought for a bit before saying, It isn't impossible to provide you with a portion of these magic rocket launchers. But Count Wine, up to now, our company has provided you with military magic machines, and most of them are on credit. The magic rocket launchers are indeed powerful, but they are also very expensive. Just one magic rocket launcher costs 700 gold coins, and a matching magic rocket launcher costs 30 gold coins. Are you sure you can afford it? Count Wine gave a cold snort. The reason you're willing to give me these military magic machines on credit is because you want me to risk my life for you. So what's the point of saying all this nonsense? Of course, he couldn't say this on the surface. Count Wine thought for a bit before replying, How about this? Chairman Sui, according to the old rules, I'll give you another piece of territory. What do you think? Sui shook his head. Too much territory doesn't mean much to me. This territory is enough for our new flyer to develop. Giving me a bit more territory doesn't make any difference to me. Count Wine immediately spread his hands. Then what do? I don't have money. Seeing Count Wine's shameless face, Sui couldn't help laughing. Count Wine was clearly going all out. He knew that Sui wouldn't take the initiative to do these things, and for a while, Sui wouldn't find a new lord to replace him. I don't need territory for now, and I don't lack money. The only thing I need right now is people, Sui said with a serious expression. People? Yes. Count Wine, let's sign a new agreement. From today onwards, as long as it's a territory you take, our new flyer will have control of half of the people in that territory. Simply put, I want half of the people. Half. Count Wine's expression was a bit ugly. Isn't that too much? If you take away all the young men, then what will happen to my territory? Don't worry. Sui waved his hand with a smile. The people I need aren't young men. On the contrary, in many of the factories under our company, we need adult women. Is that so? Count Wine looked at Sui in confusion. Apart from being used to vent desire and give birth to children, what use were adult women? If he really wanted to pick women, then wouldn't those young and beautiful girls be more attractive? Count Wine suddenly remembered that the two maids he gave to Sui, Liz and Linda, were always by Sui's side. They seemed to be very liked by Sui. Perhaps. Sui really did have a special hobby in this area. Sui didn't care about the strange thoughts in Count Wine's mind. He took out the agreement he prepared beforehand for Count Wine to take a look. Count Wine glanced over it and signed his name. He could only listen to Sui's arrangements, so it didn't matter how much he read it. After signing the agreement, the two discussed the direction of their future cooperation. Count Wine then left Sui's private manor. After Count Wine left, Sui got up and returned to his bedroom. As soon as he opened the door, Elder Alicia and Elder Lysania looked over. Elder Lysania looked over Sui before saying in a soft voice, "Take it off." Chapter 6:25. Sui didn't hesitate and quickly took off all his clothes, including his underwear. He was like a newborn baby in front of Elder Alicia and Elder Lysania. The two elders didn't have any strange expressions. They beckoned for Sui to come over and carefully observe his body from top to bottom. Then, they used their fingers to explore every inch of Sui's skin. This examination of Sui's body was slightly different from the one they did to let Sui master the elven meditation method. After the examination, there was a faint blue magic glow that came from the fingertips of the two elders at the same time. When it passed over Sui's body, it left a light blue mark on his skin. This light blue mark flickered twice and gradually disappeared as if it had sunk directly into Sui's body. This action seemed like a heavy burden for the two elders. The two of them working together only left around 20 lines that weren't that long on Sui's body before taking their hand back. At the same time, they slowly let out a sigh of relief, looking like they were very tired. "Sui, activate it," Elder Lysania said. Sui nodded. With a thought, the mana in his body circulated in an instant. Countless flickering blue lines appeared on his naked body, almost enveloping his entire body. These lines densely covered his entire body. Apart from his face, they didn't even miss out on his buttocks. At this time, Sui was like a person covered in blue light and emitting blue light. It looked very strange. The fluctuations are very stable. There shouldn't be a problem. Elder Lysania nodded and continued. "Sui, try using a spatial spell." Sui hesitated for a moment and fully activated the mana in his body. The flickering blue lines on his body immediately responded. He felt the mana in his body circulate extremely smoothly and quickly. In just a moment, it had completely condensed in his right palm. Then, a small black ball that seemed to absorb light appeared above his right hand. "Don't stop. Keep it like this," Elder Lysania instructed. Sui continued to circulate his mana, and the black ball in his hand steadily floated above his right palm, motionless. Seeing this, Elder Aleutius smiled and nodded. Chairman Su, you are indeed very talented in magic. It took you less than half a month to master spatial magic to this extent. Elder Lysania also nodded. Not bad. At this rate, you might be able to master spatial teleportation in less than half a year. As soon as the two elders finished speaking, the black ball in Su Yi's right palm suddenly flashed with a small light pattern. Then the black ball trembled. Su Yi bitterly smiled and said, Elders, you are praising me too early. I can't hold on much longer. That's nothing. Keep going and see how long you can last, Elder Lysania said. All right, I'll give it a try. Su Yi continued to circulate the mana in his body and tried his best to maintain the most basic spatial spell, Devouring Sphere. However, maintaining the Devouring Sphere required a terrifying amount of mana. Even though his mana had already surpassed that of ordinary 9th-tier magicians, he still hadn't reached the level of a great magician. Therefore, he still couldn't control the Devouring Sphere as he wished like a great magician. Therefore, his mana consumption was extremely fast. After persevering for another 2 minutes, more and more bright, white patterns flashed on the surface of the Devouring Sphere. The Devouring Sphere also began to tremble more and more violently. Seeing that Su Yi was still able to maintain the Devouring Sphere's general shape and prevent it from completely collapsing, Elder Aleutius and Elder Lysania exchanged astonished glances. Spatial magic was the most difficult element of magic to master. Even if a great magician had a deep understanding of spatial magic, it was still very difficult to control and use spatial magic. For someone like Su Yi who couldn't maintain the Devouring Ball because he didn't have enough magic, being able to maintain the general shape of the Devouring Ball was something that was almost impossible. However, Su Yi did it. Moreover, he could maintain the Devouring Sphere's general shape for 2 minutes. It could be seen that Su Yi's control over his mana and the magical elements in the spells he used had reached an astonishing level. From this point, it could be seen that Su Yi was truly an outstanding magical genius. The two elders looked regretful at the same time. If Su Yi was willing to spend all his energy and time on studying magic, or just put in more effort, his achievements in magic would not be limited to his current level. If he was willing to do so, he would have become a great magician long ago. How would he have been almost assassinated by that great magician Runa? If not for the danger that Su Yi encountered, Elder Aleutius and Elder Lysania wouldn't have thought of using Mageweth blessings on Su Yi so that he could temporarily break through the boundary between a great magician and use spatial magic with restrictions. Mageweth blessings were a secret of the elves. Under normal circumstances, the two elders would definitely not use it on a human. However, Su Yi was now related to the huge interests of the two elven tribes, the Nightsong tribe and the Moonshadow tribe. If anything happened to him, it would be an extremely serious blow to the two tribes. It might even affect the future of the two tribes. Now, the Nightsong tribe and the Moonshadow tribe were developing very well. The lives of the elves and the tribes had changed greatly, and there was a chance for them to truly integrate into human society, allowing them to continue living on this continent. The two elders would definitely not miss such a good opportunity. And the key to all of this was Su Yi. If Su Yi died, the new leader of a new flyer might not really consider the development of the two elven tribes like Su Yi did. It would also be difficult for the two elders to trust another human like they trusted Su Yi. So, Su Yi definitely couldn't die in an accident. So, even if the two elders had to expose the secret of the elves that had been passed down for thousands of years, they still had to use the Mageweth blessings on Su Yi. All of this was in hopes that Su Yi would have a way to save his life in a moment of danger. The Mageweth blessings could temporarily increase the speed of a magician's magic, indirectly increasing their magic, allowing the magician to use magic above their level. Su Yi was already on the verge of becoming a great magician, so if he jumped levels, he would be able to use spatial magic normally. Based on the current results, because of Su Yi's outstanding talent for magic, everything was going very smoothly. It was believed that as long as the Mageweth blessings were complete, Su-Yi would be able to grasp the most important teleportation magic under the strict guidance of Great Magician Camilla. This magic could instantly teleport a magician far away, which would be enough to save Su-Yi's life in a moment of danger. Although Runa didn't even have a chance to escape when he met Great Magician Camilla. That was because Great Magician Camilla's magic power had reached the peak of the Great Magician level and was only a step away from becoming an Archmagus. He had even touched a part of the spatial laws, so Runa didn't even have a chance to use teleportation magic to escape. Normally speaking, there wouldn't be a powerful Archmagus that would lower themselves to assassinate Su-Yi. As for a direct attack, what was the benefit of risking a war with the entire New Flyer? Not to mention that with New Flyer's current strength, even if an Archmagus personally came, they wouldn't have any advantages. While these thoughts quickly flashed in the minds of the two elders, Su-Yi already couldn't hold on any longer. The swallowing orb shook violently before quickly shrinking, disappearing without a trace after a while. Seeing this scene, a trace of surprise flashed in Elder Alicia and Elder Lysania's eyes again. Actually, they had already prepared all kinds of defensive measures, preparing for any unexpected situations when Su-Yi lost control of his magic. But they never thought that Su-Yi would be able to draw out his magic bit by bit in this situation, making the swallowing orb disappear in the most gentle way possible. Just based on this, it could be seen that Su-Yi's control over his magic was very shocking. However, for the two elders, the stronger Su-Yi's magic talent was, the better it was for them. Su-Yi seemed very dissatisfied. Looking at his empty right hand, he gave a sigh and shook his head. It really is a pity that I still can't completely control this swallowing orb. If I want to control the much more difficult teleportation magic, it'll be much harder. Elder Alicia said with a faint smile. No, Chairman Su. Although the swallowing orb is the most basic spatial magic, it represents the foundation of all spatial magic. Letting you master this magic is mainly to let you experience the characteristics of spatial magic, so that you can learn other spatial magic more easily. Yes, in theory, as long as you can master spatial magic, you will be able to use any spatial magic as long as you have sufficient magic power. Since you can master the swallowing orb, you will definitely be able to use teleportation magic, Elder Lysania added. When I have sufficient magic power, Su-Yi frowned and said with a wry smile, the problem is that I don't have enough magic power at all. Even a basic spatial magic like the swallowing orb can only be maintained for such a short time. How can I sustain the consumption of teleportation magic? Why do you think we gave you the Mageweth blessing? Elder Lysania glared at Su-Yi. Let me tell you, the Mageweth's blessing doesn't just increase the speed of your mana condensation and your control over magical elements. More importantly, with the Mageweth's blessing, you'll be able to reduce the effects of spatial elemental fluctuations on you when you're teleporting. That's why you'll consume very little mana when using teleportation spells. Now that you can maintain the swallowing orb for 3 minutes, you can use teleportation magic for 3 minutes or even longer. 3 minutes? How far can I teleport? Su-Yi asked the question he was most concerned about. I don't know now. Elder Lysania shook her head. The speed of teleportation depends on each mage's understanding of spatial magic and their usage of teleportation magic. Every mage is different, but with your talent, I think it shouldn't be too bad. 3 minutes. You should be able to teleport a kilometer away. A kilometer? Su-Yi thought for a while and nodded. That should be enough to escape from danger. Generally speaking, it shouldn't be a problem. Elder Alicia nodded. Actually, the most important thing is that you don't put yourself in too much danger. And with your talent, I believe that you will be able to break through to become a great mage in a few years. At that time, even without the help of the Mageweth blessing, you will be able to use teleportation magic at will. Su-Yi laughed and thought that Elder Alicia thought too highly of him. Although he was only a step away from becoming a great mage, it was very difficult for him to take this step. Many mages could only stay at the 9th tier for their entire lives and were unable to take this step. although he was very confident that he could cross this threshold, to say that it would only take a few years. He really didn't dare to be sure. When he turned his head, he saw Elder Lysania frowning slightly, seemingly deep in thought. Sui asked in surprise, "What's wrong? Elder Lysania, is there a problem?" Elder Lysania pondered for a moment and suddenly asked, "Sui, do you want to mate with me?" Chapter 626. After the hottest summer passed, the battle between Count Wine and Duke Stantine became even more intense. Duke Stantine had actually sent an assassin like great magician Runa to assassinate Sui, causing the new flyer support for Count Wine to increase. Not only did they provide large amounts of military magic machines to Count Wine, they also bought large amounts of resources from the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Ruhr, and the other countries that they cooperated with. This completely solved Count Wine's worries, allowing him to fight Duke Stantine with all his might. It was even the first time the new flyer directly intervened in a battle between lords in the Principality of Constantine. In the battle between Count Wine and Duke Stantine, they had sent out the most elite guards of the new flyer. With the terrifying firepower of the new flyer guard that was several times stronger than Count Wine's subordinates, Duke Stantine couldn't resist at all. In just 2 months, Count Wine led his subordinates to attack the capital of the Principality of Constantine, Faraday City. Duke Stantine saw that there was no hope in resisting, so he burned the glorious Duke's manor that he had spent several decades building to ashes, and he was buried in the Sea of Flames. Following this, several lords in the Principality of Constantine submitted to Count Wine and elected him as the new Duke Stantine, calling him Duke Wine. The first thing Duke Wine did after taking over the position of Duke was to ask the other lords in the duchy to disarm themselves and accept the leadership of the Duke's manor. Most of the feudal lords agreed, while only a few of them refused. Among them was the famous Viscount Anclo, who could call the wind and rain in the south of the Stantine Duchy. If a normal lord dared to resist Duke Wine, they would be met with Wine's merciless attacks. In fact, that was what Wine did when he worked. A week after he issued the order to disarm, Duke Wine immediately sent troops to suppress the lords who resisted his order. He easily defeated them and unceremoniously took their territories into his hands. However, Duke Wine didn't do anything to Anclo, who was also resisting his orders. Both sides were extremely peaceful and restrained, as if there would be no conflict at all. In fact, everyone in the Principality of Constantine knew that Anclo and Wine's biggest backer was the new flyer, or rather, Sui. Although these two lords could call the wind and summon the rain in the Principality of Constantine, in reality, whatever they wanted to do had to depend on the mood of the new flyer and Sui. This was a fact that made people feel helpless. The support of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce was important to any side. If the Frestec Chamber of Commerce gave up on one side, that side would definitely be defeated by the other side. Or to put it more bluntly, only the new flyer, or rather, only Sui, could decide the internal situation of the Principality of Constantine. What made everyone puzzled was that since the new flyer was so powerful, why didn't they just send their troops and conquer all the lords in the Principality of Constantine instead of choosing Anclo and Duke Wine's forces? Or he could just choose to support one side and help that side rule the Stantine Duchy. Wouldn't that give him even more benefits? Actually, I can do that. Sui looked solemnly at Anclo and Duke Wine, who were sitting on his left and right respectively. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, no one in the Principality of Constantine would believe that Anclo and Duke Wine, who were fighting for control of the Principality of Constantine, would be sitting opposite each other calmly. They even had smiles on their faces, as though they weren't enemies, but friends instead. The reason why I didn't do that is because I feel that it would cause too much damage to the Principality of Constantine. It wouldn't be beneficial to the development of the new flyer in the Principality of Constantine. Sui continued. Anclo took a sip of his tea. He looked at Duke Wine, who had a smile on his face, but there was an ominous glint in his eyes. He said with a faint smile, "Chairman Sue, Let me guess. Your biggest worry is that the Stantine Duchy, being in chaos for a long time, will seriously affect the population, right? That's right. He nodded. Our company is in urgent need of manpower. The population of the Principality of Constantine is very important to me, and I don't want them to be affected by the war. Anklo's face sunk a bit. Chairman Sue, forgive me for being blunt. If it wasn't for you supporting Count Wine wouldn't have the guts to attack other lords, let alone challenge Duke Stantine. Duke Wine's brows knit together as he angrily glared at Anklo. What? Viscount Anklo, are you looking down on me? How about we go back and see who's better? Anklo looked at Duke Wine with disdain and coldly snorted. If it wasn't for Chairman Sue stopping me, I would have already beaten your motley crew. Duke Wine was instantly enraged. He suddenly stood up and pointed at Anklo as he shouted, Good, then we'll go back and fight. Let's see who's the motley crew. Anklo was about to say something, but Sue gave a cold snort. The two immediately fell silent as they looked at Sue. I don't care if you don't like each other, but since you're here, sit down and properly talk. Sue coldly looked over. The two glared at each other before sitting down at the same time. Seeing the two holding back their anger, Sue slightly knit his brows. With their attitudes, how could he expect them to coexist peacefully and work together for the development of the Principality of Constantine? If possible, Sue really wanted to do what many lords in the Principality of Constantine had guessed. He wanted to eliminate the new Flyers Guards and wipe out all opposition in the Principality of Constantine. He wanted to bring the Principality of Constantine under his control. That way, no matter how he wanted to develop the Principality of Constantine, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. He wouldn't be as restrained as he was now. However, the manpower problem he was worried about was not only the new Flyers factories, but also the new Flyers Guards. Even though the new Flyers Guards were constantly expanding, there were now close to 3,000 of them. Equipped with all kinds of military magic machines, long-term training, and high quality, the nearly 3,000 guards filled with dwarven and elven warriors were extremely powerful. In a head-on battle, they could easily defeat more than 10,000 enemies. However, they were too few in number. While they could protect the new Flyers' main base, they were far from enough to rule the entire Principality of Constantine. That was why Sue had to find a powerful lord in the Principality of Constantine to act as his agent. He could use this agent to reform his plans for the Principality of Constantine. Anklo and Duke Wine had their pros and cons in this regard. Anklo was outstanding and had a clear understanding of the situation. His ideas were also quite similar to Sue Yi's. If he cooperated with Sue Yi, it would be easier for him to complete his plans for the Principality of Constantine. But Anklo had a flaw that Sue Yi was very worried about, which was that he had great ambitions. In other words, he had great ambitions, so it was hard for this kind of person to be willing to submit to others. He might not listen to Sue Yi's arrangements in the future. On the other hand, Duke Wine couldn't compare to Anklo in other aspects, but he obeyed Sue Yi's orders and was very suitable as a puppet. Sue Yi didn't have the ability to eliminate both of them for the time being, so he chose to support both of them at the same time and let them balance each other out. At least for now, the two of them had to gain the support of the new Flyer, so they would make enough concessions to Sue Yi. Today, Sue Yi was able to gather both of them at the same time because of this. After a pause, Sue Yi asked Anklo, Anklo, I remember that your dream is to let the people of the Principality of Constantine live a good life, right? Anklo nodded. Yes, this is my dream that will never change. But Chairman Sue, the Principality of Constantine has been embroiled in the flames of war for a year now. This is not what I want. Sue nodded and didn't respond. Instead, he turned to Duke Wine and asked, What about you, Duke Wine? What is your dream? Duke Wine pursed his lips. I don't have such lofty dreams. I just want to live a better life. Vermin. Anklo snorted. Duke Wine glared and was about to fly into a rage. Sue waved his hand and stopped him.